sewer issue, and I'm unsure whether within the EHO report that Susan is going to include that. If not, I'd put it under new business, I can speak to it, or just kind of comment on Susan's.
I'll comment on it in the EHO.
All right.
The sewer break, and I'll also talk about Lincoln School's heat issue this weekend.
Okay. Do they call it Lincoln School Apartments? What do they call it?
Lincoln School apartment.
Okay. Lincoln School. So we'll put those both under your agenda, right? Your
Yes.
report, I mean. Okay. Heating problem. Okay. All right. Any other changes? Anybody else have anything they want to add? Okay.
Madam Chairman, I move to approve the agenda.
All right. Any second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We need to go talk about the minutes of the November 21st meeting, which I missed, so.
Oh, so Peter, I have a couple changes.
All right. What's the date today? The 21st, right?
Yeah.
Exactly
I'll go
2
through the
months ago.
changes, and then I'll propose a motion, unless Peter's got something. On page number, oh, where are the page numbers? Betty, where are the page numbers? That was, usually it's in the footer. Yeah, okay, so we'll have to fix that footer. On page 2, Peter?
Yep.
Lizzie, get that? Under the motion, I'll read it. It's the second one that deals with the 25 Guilford Road. To grant 5 divergences from the state Title V sanitary code sections, blah, 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 and the second one, and 1 variance from the Hingham Supplementary Rules and Regulations, section 6.9, conditional to the 10 conditions identified in the board's approval letter dated November 12th, 2012, semicolon, and based on architectural plans dated 11/5/19. So I'm adding a semicolon and an and.
Okay.
That's one change.
Okay.
The next one's even easier. On page number 3, up on the comments where it says, the third one down from the top, Ms. Sarni, I look forward to, Ms. Sarni said, looking forward to fiscal year 22, comma, the health department is going to need a new truck. And that's all I have for the minutes as far as changes. What do you got, Peter?
Changes, I would move to accept
Okay.
minutes of
Cool.
Can I,
November
can I?
20, oh, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, I think there are a couple other things I just wanted to.
Yep. What do you got?
On page 2, on the second line, under 24-5 Guilford Road, on the second line, should it be homeowners were not able to complete the project within 2 years, as opposed to with 2 years?
Yeah, within. That's right.
Yep.
And then further down, at the bottom of the bullet points, the last bullet point section, it just says, in the second line, Mr. Grady said the letter that was returned was noted to be undeliverable from that address? Was that what you want to say, or
The letter that was returned was undeliverable.
was,
Returned undeliverable
was,
from that address.
Was
said the letter that was returned was undeliverable
Yeah, that
or
works.
something? Yeah, I mean, it's not, it doesn't quite make sense the way it's written.
But just
I'm
as
not sure.
easy to understand with the English. Mr. Gray said the letter that was returned was undeliverable from that address.
Okay. And I just have a question, just as somebody who wasn't at the meeting, but I think the whole point of having these meeting minutes is that so when people go back to look later. In the next line down where you said they were granted 5 divergences from the state Title V sanitary codes, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
It doesn't specifically say what those divergences are, right? Or
not.
does it?
There are 3 of them that
How
were
would
the
you, like if 10 years from now, somebody wants to go back and see what was going on, how would you know what those are?
Yeah.
You'd have, you could, but you could pull the file, so you could go there.
Trigger to say, hey,
Okay.
Let's look in the file to see what those.
So my guess
exactly were.
is the 15405-1A is a setback to a property line, so there are 3 different setbacks
Okay,
that were granted. And
okay.
then, whatever B is a setback to a structure.
Okay, just
Yeah.
so, I mean, so that if somebody wanted to know, there's a way to find out, is that
We can
correct?
put them in if you want.
No, they don't think, as long as there's a method that you can, because people do go back to look at the minutes to find out what went wrong. So if they at least could go into the file and find out.
Because years and years ago, we used to do it a little bit more wordy like that.
Yeah, and the other thing was on the,
What
the
page?
125 Prospect Street at the top of page 2. It was, they were putting horses.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, there was the comment and the motion, including a setback to a wetland for less than 100 feet. So was that discussed up above, but it just wasn't mentioned?
Yeah.
Okay. Because, I mean, there was all this information about,
Do you see the last one? That was the water to the aquarium well. And then we
Right.
got into the whole,
and
Wetland setbacks.
is it 500 for the?
no, it's 400.
400, so that was fine. But then, then there's nothing said about the wetlands less than 100 feet and whatever, and the manure storage for less than 100 feet, except for in the motion. I just wanted to, but is that what that was the situation, that it was less than 100 feet?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah. You can either get it in a bullet point, or you can certainly see it within the motion.
Okay.
I don't think, I hear what you're saying. You'd like to see it discussed in a bullet and then the motion
right, I was just
affirmed.
wondering if, is first, like, somebody who wasn't there, that's the only thing that I'm wondering about.
We did talk about the wetlands a lot, though.
You did, okay, well then, all right, I just didn't know, it was just, and then the only other question I had was.
Oh, you're going for it.
I know, really. The, budget,
Ooh,
the level service budget, have you already gone before, like, the selectmen and advisory? Oh, in December, so everything was fine, we didn't have any, okay, awesome, I just didn't know when that was, sorry, that someone wasn't here. Okay,
Okay.
wanna make a
I would-
motion?
Yeah, I would move that the board approve the minutes November 21, 2019 as amended.
Second?
okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, so now at 7:12 PM, we are now going to move on to the public hearing part of our meeting. So we're going to open that. Okay, at 7:12. So I have to say it again, 7:12, we're opening the public hearing of our meeting regarding the supplemental rules and regulations. And getting an update presentation by Susan Sarney. So one last time, we're opening the public meeting for, the public hearing, for the discussion of the supplementary rules and regulations for the disposal of sanitary sewage at 7:12 PM.
Kirk's gonna give the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, he's gonna do it?
If you guys wanna sit over here, you can.
Yeah, let's
see
move
it
over.
better.
All right, actually, you can see if I can just move a little bit more. I want to write stuff down. You gonna turn the lights off? I have too many copies.
You all set, Lizzie?
Yeah, I'm fine, I can see.
Are you, Cameron? Good evening, everybody. My name is Kirk Schultz. Obviously, I'm one of the members of the Board of Health, and I'm going to go through our PowerPoint presentation to explain some of the more notable changes within our supplemental rule changes. And I know that we'll go back to the chair, and she'll open up the meeting for a discussion about the changes. So if you have anything that you'd like to inquire about on the presentation, again, we can come back to that when we're in the discussion phase. But this is the explanation phase, and we're doing this also for the people at home that aren't able to ask questions. So we want to have a standard run-through so everyone gets the presentation and we don't kind of break it up with a lot of conversation that we could do later. Susan, for advance is not one of the arrows. There we go. So it's backwards. Okay. The supplementary rules are Hingham's unique set of rules built on top of State Title V that look at the conditions and the processes that we have within the town of Hingham. And so almost every town does a set of supplemental septic rules unique to the conditions within the local environment in which that town is located. So we're doing the same thing, obviously. If you look, the regulations were last updated 1998, 20 years ago. And over time, technology changes and the town grows and things are become different. So within the supplementary rules, there are a lot of changes. It's almost a rewrite relative to the number of words. But as far as the material changes of significance, there are 4 of those. And we're going to go through those in a little bit greater detail. And you can see on the left-hand side, a septic system for your house, it's putting, septic effluent with the toxins and the viruses and the bacterium into the ground, which that water and maybe potentially some of those things, and toxic metals and drugs, those things can percolate down into the groundwater layer, and you can see this house happens to have also a portable well. So it's a circular situation, but again, we're trying to protect the groundwater within Hingham. And you think about it from a Board of Health, there are a lot of things that we do. You just heard about an animal or regulation permit that we grant at the last meeting. We do all sorts of things. You're going to hear about some sewer break. But protecting the environment, our citizens, and the drinking water, which comes from our groundwater, is the most significant thing that we do on the Board of Health. We spend a lot of time on septic system design because as time goes on, more and more properties are being developed, and that's just more and more pollutants into our ground. It's not getting any less. And so as we have more development, this problem of how to handle septic effluent becomes more significant. Hence the fact that we're updating our regs on a regular basis, 20 years. The 4 new requirements. The first, and I'll probably read them here, the first is to establish a new limit for nitrogen that is discharged onto a property. And we have that within specifically the Zone 2 property area, which is the region around our production wells for our municipal water company, now a municipal water department, in which our drinking water is pulled from. And so we'll go into that. In addition to the Zone 2, which is established, it also is those areas served by private wells. And one of the things that the board has talked about, and we're probably going to go through, is we've defined an area in West Hingham off of Ward Street that does have a scenario in which there are a lot of private wells, and the board was in the process of designating that as an area served by private wells. So it would come under this particular requirement. We haven't finished that particular process of declaring that area, but we certainly talked about an awful lot, and we have maps on that particular area. So that's the first requirement of significance. Just to kind of go into that a little bit more, when we talk about how we determine discharging nitrogen, this is something we did 20 years ago. It was the routine of looking at this through a calculation on the property. And now we have a lot easier mechanism with our 12,500 per bedroom land area use for the entire town, but this is looking at it the way we used to look at it, and so we're kind of going back in a way and putting more emphasis, and I'll explain why in a second. The second proposed new requirements is establishing a FAM, a financial assurance mechanism requirement, for all of the technology, the treatment plants, the alternative treatment plants for denitrification. And the board has actually been placing this requirement into our conditions for years, because what we found is these alternative treatment systems, they break. You know, they have moving parts. They have features in which, unlike a conventional system, they fail. And what we found is that, at least in a couple of instances, the individuals or the companies that own these particular treatment plants haven't set enough money aside to be able to repair the system, and our town is at risk, and it has been at risk, and currently at risk, from the fact that we have septic systems that have failed, and there hasn't been an adequate FAM in place in order to get that septic system repaired quickly and efficiently. So this is a problem that is current and it's significant. The third new proposed requirement is on a lot division. A new lot division requirement that clearly identifies how a parcel is divided, and to ensure that any septic system that is on that parcel, or the one that has been approved by the board granting an approval, and then the homeowner comes in and says, well, I'm going to change this now and divide the property, that septic system will not be put into non-compliance with our regulations or state regulations relative to the separation, the dividing of that particular lot. And this has an awful lot to do with the planning board and their process, and we'll get into this a little bit later on. And we've seen this a number of times, where the home which is on the property, the septic system is no longer able to adequately serve that structure because the lot's been divided. And the Board of Health has had no input into this, except for after the fact, that we're commenting to the planning board, hey, what'd you do here? You know, you allowed this property to be divided. Well, we didn't know. And so we're putting this particular requirement into our regs that requires the applicant to come to us, and we're going to inform them about what it is that they need to be aware of. And then the last, we have a new section that clearly defines that homeowners, they need to do a Title V inspection when updating or upgrading their property. And so we've outlined the three that we thought were significant as far as their upgrading, having a larger number of people living on that property or changing the way that they're using the property, in which the Title V inspection identifies, you know, what they have as far as a septic system, and is it able to accept safely these particular changes. And so that's what the inspection does. It gives the homeowner information. And so the three things that we're suggesting that we look at are accessory dwelling units. Well, that's an easy one, right? That's adding a bedroom to an existing house. So why don't we have a Title V inspection that says, yeah, well, can you do that? The second is when you install a new potable well. And you know, what's the setback on that? What type of conditions exist where the new well is being placed? And so let's see what the septic system that's in the ground is all about. Because many of these situations, I recall one in Hingham, that they have no septic system plans downstairs in the health department. And so, you know, we're going to get an as-built of their best guesstimate of where the septic system is, but we have no idea. And so that's what the Title V inspection is going to help out with. And then the third one is on the very small lots of 25,000 square feet or less, in which in Hingham, you know, that's a 2-bedroom house for that 25,000 square feet. And so if someone is going to put a sizable home renovation, and we define what sizable is, on that property, you know, it's going to cut down the amount of rainwater that can come into that lot and diffuse the septic, especially the nitrogen that's being put into the environment from the effluent. And so we're saying that when you're doing this, we're not prohibiting the expansion of your house and the renovations, not at all. We're just telling you, if you're going to do this, well, why don't you have a Title V inspection? Because again, most of these scenarios that we've seen, there are no plans of the septic systems on file downstairs, because they predated much of the requirements. So here's a picture down below, again, what we had seen earlier, of a typical septic system. And the only thing I'm going to point out, and Ms. Sarni and I agreed, you have the house, you have a septic tank, you have a pump chamber, you see the nitrogen going into the land, the lot, the land mass, percolating down into the groundwater, and we want less than 10 milligrams per liter. But where it says nitrogen removing biofilter, we'd like to change the word. It's not removing, but it's reducing, because you can't take nitrogen or ammonia completely out of the effluent. So a defined limit of nitrogen load for properties within Zone 2. Again, we're only doing Zone 2. Not the entire town, within Zone 2. Or areas served by private wells. And I did talk about that a little bit earlier. So nitrogen load, and we have a calculation we're going to put up here in a minute, but nitrogen load, the amount of nitrogen that's being forced into the ground, comes from the impervious areas, the amount of roof and driveway pavement, and so the way that water doesn't percolate down as readily, or with an infiltrator, it is introduced rapidly. Lawn fertilizer, and we all know that, you know, fertilizer is made up of, nitrogen, right? And that air added to a property is increasing the load. And if you have a lawn that has grass, you're fertilizing it, or else it looks lousy. And so that's part of the equation. And then rainfall, we talked about that, rainfall on the property. So the size of your property, which the rain is diluting that nitrogen, as well as the number of bedrooms. And the most significant introduction of nitrogen, ammonia, into the groundwater comes from human waste, right? Excreted waste. And so the number of bedrooms determines the number of humans that can live in the house. So, where is the Zone 2 water supply area? You can't see it, but Hingham runs up here. This is the harbor. There's the islands. Here is the Wampatuck State Park and coming down. So this particular slide, we'll have this up on the website. We'll have the town. You can see it a lot better than on this slide here. But here's this Zone 2 area, right? It's about a third of the town, a fourth or a third of the town. Here are production wells within the Zone 2. These two areas up top that circle the harbor, this is the Hingham Sewer District, and this is the Weir River Sewer District. So again, you can't see the outline, unfortunately, of the town, but that's what the circles are. So the Weir River, and when you look at the lovely graphic that we have on the website in the PowerPoint, which is right here, you're going to be able to see the Weir River watershed area, which is it's about 3/4 of the town. You're going to be able to see the Zone 2, which we can see here. You can see the two sewer districts which we have. And so this will be up on our website, the brown circles, the red circles, and the pink region for you to see. The main thing is that we've identified that area in South Hingham, the Zone 2, is the only area that we're applying this new nitrogen load standard to. Nitrogen does, for something that's just really an elemental atom, right? Nitrogen, it's in the air. 80% of our air is made up of nitrogen. But when nitrogen is in the water and it gets there through either fertilizer or septic, and they're one and the same almost, it's ammonia. And it's a pollutant, and it's something that decreases the amount of oxygen that is in the water, and you'll see these algae blooms, you see the fish kills, because of the way that the nitrogen removes oxygen. It grabs that oxygen from the environment. And as I mentioned earlier, nitrogen is not totally removed from the groundwater. Over time, it degrades, but the only way to safely lower nitrogen is to limit its introduction in the first place. And we can do that by controlling the number of people in a house that the septic systems would need to manage, or we have new denitrification technology that we've been using for the past 15 years and exploring what works and what hasn't worked, and you're seeing more and more of that. And pretty much the regulation is going to be addressing that, because we're just seeing so many of those I&I systems. A&I systems. I systems. There we go. Aqueous nitrogen, nitrogen in the water, as opposed to nitrogen in the air. Nitrogen can't be filtered. You can't, put on your counter a filtering unit that takes the nitrogen out of your drinking water. Unlike you can arsenic and some of the larger elements. Nitrogen is really small. Right? Excessive nitrogen in drinking water can cause blue baby syndrome. And you may say, oh, geez, you don't see much of this. No, you do. And it comes from parents using formula instead of breast milk with their children, and they're mixing it with their tap water. Nitrogen builds up in the groundwater over time. We mentioned that. It's only diluted by rain. That's why the amount of pervious versus impervious is important to a property. Septic systems are the leading cause of introduced nitrogen in the environment. What's second? Fertilizer. So the ways to reduce nitrogen loading on your property: use IA systems, innovative alternative. Reduce the impervious areas, the hardscapes that allow the water to sheet off your property and not percolate down through. And reduce fertilizer applications. Just do essentially what you need, as opposed to over-fertilizing. We had somebody in the office, that was last week, Susan, right? He works here in the town. He fertilizes his lawn 4 times a year. It's just like, why do you do that? So this is the nitrogen load calculation. And for those engineers in the room, this is going to seem real familiar, because this calculation was developed by the Cape Cod Commission back in 1999. And before the town established its 12,500 per bedroom limit to make it real easy, this was the way that you went through to determine the amount of nitrogen on the property. And you were seeing all sorts of playing with the previous calculations on nitrogen loading. And so the board, this is before I came on, I think it's before Peter came on, that the 12.5 went into effect, just took care of that situation in which there was some questioning of the calculations. So here we're bringing it back, but we're going to do something for you. We're going to provide you on our website with the actual calculations on an Excel spreadsheet. You just type in the information, and it's going to plop out the numbers. And so we saw this before. It's nitrogen added to the lot is the numerator, right? And that is the number of bedrooms, the impervious area, and the added fertilizer, divided by the wastewater volume, the water volumes, which is the number of bedroom that flows, the impervious runoff, plus principally the rainwater recharge, the natural area. And so what's going to happen with this particular equation, we hope, is that we're going to see homeowners that are coming in that are on the edge as far as their property, the size, and their nitrogen loading, that, why don't you look at increasing the natural area of your property to help with taking the amount of nitrogen out of the groundwater in your area and off your property. Simple way to address it. And that way we're not seeing, a house and then every square inch around the house is all lawn. Not only does it look odd, but when you have natural areas, it brings beauty to the property by not having it all lawn. And it helps the environment and helps us on the Board of Health with septic system design and permitting. And here we have the note. Remember I mentioned earlier that each bedroom, according to state law, 2 persons, and the discharge, the waste that the 2 people produce is what Title V is based off of. And that's state regulation, that's not us. So that's the equation. And again, we have it on a spreadsheet, and we actually have it here in this computer if you want to look at it later on. Oh, we have the example of it, not the actual spreadsheet, but here's a picture of it. And just briefly, you're just going to type in there the number of bedroom, you're going to type in the lot size, you're going to type in what your lawn area is, and you're going to type in what the impervious area, and that's 2 things. You know, what's your footprint? That's your roof, including the garage. And then you're going to type in, you know, what your driveway is. Now, in Hingham, we did it for you just to kind of give you, this is the average property in Hingham, is about 3,100 square feet of roof and about 600 square feet of driveway for 3,700 square feet of impervious area. That's the average property in Hingham. The average lawn area on a lot is between 1/4 and 1/3 of a lot, average across the country. So in Hingham, per acre, the average lawn area for one of our Hingham properties should be right around 14,000 square feet, right? So a little less than 3 bags of fertilizer. It comes in 5,000 square feet amounts. We did this on a lot, we did it on a 1 acre lot, just to kind of give you a basis to understand, you know, what's the area that we're talking about. I think that in Hingham, our average size lot is just under 1 acre. And then, you know, 3 bedrooms. Because in Hingham, that would be typically what you would see on a 1 acre lot through current regulatory constructs. So when you put all that information in there, now we have some constants of the equation. In Hingham, the average rainfall is about 48 inches a year. Nice round number, 4 inches a month. On Cape Cod, where they did this actual study, their rainfall is 44 inches. And I think in Boston it might be 50, a little bit higher. So we're 48. Lawn fertilizer rate, here's a constant. Typically when you're fertilizing, you know, to be able to have the grass grow efficiently, it's about 3 pounds per 1,000 square feet. That's what you're applying in fertilizer. The nitrogen concentration in wastewater, again, a standard, 35 milligrams per liter. And the runoff from the pavement and the roof, here are some standards that the Cape Cod Commission developed, which is an accepted standard, really, for this across the country. Cape Cod was leading on this. So on a 3-bedroom home in Hingham, 1 acre, that has the average house, the average lawn, you're going to see a nitrogen load of 7.35 milligrams per liter on a 3-bedroom. Pretty cool, right? Now, if you bump that up to 5 bedrooms, and that goes above the even the Title V limit, not just the Hingham supplement, but Title V, the nitrogen load bumps up to 10.01, so that would go over the limit. Too loud? Is that what it is? Oh, you're next door, Paul? Oh, I thought you were upstairs. So we have 5 bedrooms. The nitrogen load would be above the regulatory limit that we're suggesting, which is 10 milligrams per liter. So on a 1 acre lawn, according to Title V, you can put a 4-bedroom house. You can't put a 5-bedroom, and this confirms that. And look, it just goes over just by a little bit. So this doesn't seem that restrictive, does it? FAMs. FAMs require with all innovative and advanced treatment systems. Every one of them requires a FAM. It's a legal agreement and an escrow account mechanism. So you have a document that says, yeah, you know, if my system breaks, I'm going to repair it. I promise to do so. And then the escrow, we have the available funds to be able to repair it. And as I mentioned earlier in Hingham, you know, we have a facility in Hingham in which they have gone through 3 different failures. No, 2 different failures. They're on their third system. And these failures have existed for years. And what I believe, and I think others believe, the reason that we see these systems not being repaired in a timely manner, they don't have the funds set aside in an escrow to do it. That for some reason, when this was originally established, they underfunded it. So they've been doing it piecemeal, and it's awful. We need to have a funding mechanism that is adequately established so they can go in there and replace that. And in our regulations, we actually brought in experts, and 50% is what we have in our regs set aside in escrow. It's modeled on the state permitting system for FAMs. You know, that's the state has that requirement right now for their projects, for discharge permits, wastewater discharge permits. So we modeled it off of that. Now, for, you know, ma and pa that have their house that either, you know, or, have sold it or is thinking of selling it, or their system has failed, and they need to put in a advanced treatment system because their lot is really small, and that's all they can do. We'll never kick them out of their house. We're going to put something on their property. We're going to use treatment, or typically treatment is recommended by the engineer. And so what we have within the requirement are for those upgrades, for remedial use, is a homeowner can come in and they can apply for and receive a waiver for an existing home. So we're not putting anybody who's currently living in Hingham under the requirement that they need to set up an escrow account and a legal agreement. Two reasons. First of all, their systems are inexpensive to start with because it's a home. Unlike what we're seeing at one of these complexes in South Hingham, a huge development and, a lot of septic that's being pumped every day for years. So in an existing home, we have a waiver application. So again, all treatment systems that use innovative and advanced technology will require a FAM, but the homeowner has to come in and apply for a waiver. I can't imagine we wouldn't grant it unless they don't follow through with the basic rules that we have within the regs, which is they understand what their advanced treatment system is and what are the requirements to maintain that system over the course of each year. Simple things. Here's the lot divisions, right? And this happens to be a lot that happened a number of years ago. You have an entire lot. Here's the house. And here's the septic system. So, and the property can handle that house, the number of bedrooms in the house, and the septic system designed for that purpose. We don't over-design or allow the over-designing of a septic system because it won't work efficiently. It has to be matched to the number of bedrooms in the house, and the number of bedrooms is determined by the lot size. So in this particular case, the homeowner wanted to sell off part of the property, divide it for a neighbor to use. Or, we're seeing a lot of these in town which they're cutting the property in half in which they're building a new house in the back. You see a lot of these split lots going on. We've had a number of them. And so when this happens, the existing septic system, is placed in non-compliance because, in this case, a third of the land that's required to diffuse that nitrogen is being taken out. It's being removed. So we have within our proposed rules a requirement that if you don't do this, hey, figure out what your bedrooms are, and you come in and tell us if you can safely do this for the environment and for your fellow neighbors and for the town. Because, we happen to have our drinking water come from underneath our homes. So a proposed lot division can't place any existing septic system on the pre-divided land into non-compliance. And I mentioned earlier, particularly the current requirement that is unchanged, which is 12,500 square feet per bedroom requirement, and that's what a lot of it is based off of. So when these plans are submitted, you know, we're going to get a copy of what you're submitting to the planning board. And the plans must show, you know, all these septic systems and adjacent wells, you know, drinking wells and irrigation wells. And then a title search. You know, does that property have a deed restriction where, you know, it should only be a 3-bedroom to start with because it has insufficient square footage of the property to support the number of bedrooms in the house, or what they had. And then a list of the direct abutters, because we want to know where the septic systems are of the neighbors. Because if he or she splits their property, you know, now one of the abutters who wants to do some expansion on their property, and they have setback issues they didn't have before, they should know about it. That this is going to affect them, the division. And right now, it's not happening. You know, they know that, oh, geez, they're going to split the property next door. They don't know that the splitting the property is going to affect their septic system and the expansion they can do on their own property. So it's only fair that we notify the abutters of that. And then the last one, Title V inspections. So with a new well, we talked about that, because in many of these situations with a new well, we don't know what the septic system is on the property. So go out there and tell us what it is. And, you know, we shouldn't be requiring everybody that has a well to give us as-built plans. We don't want to be too onerous. If you want to, you know, update your well, cool. Well, why don't you go through and update your septic system inspection too? So we like properties that have their own private water supply, you know. The smaller lots, we talked about that, in which the footprint of the new proposed expansion is 33% larger than what's there now. You know, a modest renovation of the home, but it's a small lot, right? And most of these lots, 25,000 square feet. You know, regulation only allows 2 bedrooms. You know, how many of those do you see? You know, most of them are 3 or 4. They're grandfathered. So they're dumping nitrogen into the ground. We can't control that because they're grandfathered well above what the acceptable limit is in many cases. Obviously, you're going to do it when you increase the number of bedrooms. That's, you know, present now if you're enlarging your house and putting bedrooms on. And a little bit later on, once we get out of the public hearing, we're going to talk about a policy that the board developed for the number of bedrooms and what that entails and the definitions. And then the last one, when you're applying for a permit for a accessory dwelling unit, because you can have additional, you are going to have additional bedrooms with that. And I think that the board is going to look at accessory dwelling units right now as a bedroom, and maybe at some point we'll look at that as some of the properties that are 55 and over that have a little different Title V component to it. But to begin with, we're going to keep it in our regs. Just have an inspection done. And here are the lots in Hingham that have the 25,000 square feet or less. So a fair amount. They're all over. And you can see it perfectly right here on that one. All right. So more information. You can contact us at the board. We have a website in which this presentation will be on, along with the regulations, and everything we do is on our Board of Health. And, you know, every month we have an article about some type of public health item that's important. Cancer, obesity, all sorts of things that we're working on. This is our January presentation that we'll be having. You can call, you can email our Executive Health Officer, Susan Sarney. She can answer your questions and take your comments and suggestions, because even though we may vote to approve these tonight, we can always go back and revisit that, depending upon what the comments are from the public. And so, any amended version will be published, and then we can have a final vote if there are significant changes. So with that, I am done with my presentation, and I will turn the lights back on, and we'll go back to the public hearing, and the chair's going to run that. Thank you. We'll keep that going. Can you go up and man it? Okay. For 1 minute?
What's it?
You're going to answer questions?
I will. I'm just looking at this. All right.
Oh,
How do we want to deal with?
I think that we can, there's two things. We can, the regulations as drafted are on the website. I'm sure everyone has seen that. We have a couple of comments. I know that I have for some changes with that. We can go into it. They're just English changes. But as far as the presentation, the more significant the material changes, probably just open it up for comment and see what we get.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but do we need to read these or anything also?
Um,
We have two memos.
Yeah.
One
I'd
from-
kind of go through
We
the
should be
public
able-
first and do
okay.
that second while I get a chance to read it.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, I'm just reading it to myself. Okay, so why don't we open this up to the public as far as discussion, comments, questions? Since you all are in the business, so to
I
speak.
did a fabulous job, huh? All right. Everyone's educated.
Yes, sir.
Who has the FAM funds?
Oh, okay, we have to have you come up to the microphone so that, because this is being recorded or televised, I guess.
You need to speak in the mic.
Okay.
People at home.
Sorry about
To
that.
identify himself.
I know,
Yeah.
Paul will come over and yell at us again.
Yeah, and if you could identify yourself and where you live, that
My
would.
name is Ron Kutu. I live in Derby Brook condos, but I've been a resident of Hingham since 1971. Just a little explanation on the FAM. Who has the funds for this? The town, the developer, the condo association, the state? If you could clarify that for us.
May I? Yeah, only because I kind of taking the lead on that. A FAM is a contract in which the owner of the septic system that has been permitted has to provide the town. So in the beginning, it's the developer that has to submit that as part of the permit process to get the septic system approved. And so they would put into escrow the 50% funds to repair the system and for annual maintenance, in case something goes catastrophically wrong, and we've seen that. When a condo association takes over the project and comes into it, it would be a condo association escrow account, similar to what you have in your roof. Like you have a global account within the condo association for roof repairs in case of catastrophic damage. Most condo associations have that protection. This is just one of those protections, but I would argue a protection for the town, in addition for yourselves. Because if your septic system breaks in your condominium association, what are you going to do? You can't live there because you can't, the septic system is polluting and contaminating the lot. You'd have to potentially have the condo association, the condo development declared inhabitable because of a septic system failure, live elsewhere and come back when it's repaired. And so what this does is it sets aside those funds that you can go in there and immediately start making those changes, and the board is comfortable that you have at least the financial funds to begin that process, and then getting the other 50% in that regard. So as opposed to what we're seeing now where there's no funds and they say, well, I don't have any money. It's going to take us to, some time to do that. And when you look at like the Linden Ponds, it took them 8 years for them to, put money in, because, they were still building. They didn't have a lot of residents there to fund their FAM. And the board would consider something like that, I would imagine. We've talked about it. But the FAM is owned, it's an escrow. It's not owned by the town. It's owned by the condominium association that eventually takes over that particular property that has the advanced
But the
technology
town does
system.
hold on to the money.
Yeah, and so as far as the
For the-
banking component, the town is the bank for you, right? It'll hold that for you, and you can take out of the escrow account every year to do some type of upgrade and maintenance. You just have to repay it. So it's not as though it's locked up It's available money for you to use annually to fund ongoing maintenance. You just have to, maintain that fund over time. But it's available to you. So it's your money. And again, the state requires this currently for the larger projects, and so we're going to apply it ourselves. And we have been. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Did that answer your questions to the extent you wanted them answered? Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Gabe Crocker. I live in 3 Ring Road in Situate. Sorry that I'm not a Hingham resident, but I am a civil engineer with a business that resides in 2 Sharp Street in Hingham. So we deal with clients with us all the time. So a lot of my questions are really around how it will fundamentally work so that I can guide them properly, because we usually field, those of us in the business, we field a lot of the initial calls when people are trying to look at property, and they may look at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 properties before they settle on one. So we get a lot of those frontline calls. And some of the challenges that we've had, just as you're writing the regs, the nitrogen loading, Calc 1 in particular, I do quite a bit down the Cape. One of the elements of it that the Cape Cod Commission does take into consideration is existing non-treated systems that are on the property today, so a redevelopment type situation. So there isn't that much greenfield property left out there that's undeveloped. So in a redevelopment situation, typically those calculations will take into consideration that you're taking 2 existing house systems that are failed, out of compliance. You may be doing some form of redevelopment. You're going to be proposing a treatment plant, and the net benefit is a significant environmental increase and decrease in overall nitrogen compared to the current situation. So I think my question is, how do the regs address the redevelopment scenarios?
You mean for individual homes?
Well, you'd probably see it, some on individual homes, but probably you see it more on the commercial side of things as people combine parcels or, buy up a couple pieces, put something together. They're going to take a lot of, older properties out of non-compliance and develop into something new. That effort should be encouraged, because it's from an environmental perspective to encourage them to consolidate and actually bring up to code. There should be an incentive where I think, at least the way I saw it in the presentation, I apologize because it may address it in the regs in detail, is there any credit given to, existing systems that are going to be upgraded as part of those calcs?
Madam Chairman, may I?
Yeah, you go ahead.
I don't want to do all the talking, but.
That's right.
I feel short next to this thing.
Yeah. I think that when the board went through this process, that we added the nitrogen load component within only Zone 2. The idea was principally to educate the homeowner and design architects that we're interested that they know that the amount of nitrogen they're putting into the ground. And that was the focus, was education. If you look at it, it's actually a lower standard than what we have with the 12,500.
I was wondering
And so, yeah, and so it is, again, an educational piece. And so over time, maybe we may change some of our standards based on how this works, but this is step 1. And what I think you're doing is the incentives. I don't think this is a mechanism, to do that here in Hingham, because we're not like Cape Cod that, for the scenarios that you have. And so what we would want you to do is to develop the property the way you want. Just don't exceed the regulatory standards. And this is just an educational piece to me. It doesn't have a incentive component, nor do I think is one helpful for that.
But were you asking about the FAMs in
No,
specific?
I have a lot of
Oh,
questions
okay.
on
Oh,
those,
all right.
because
Sorry.
I've had plenty of clients that we've struggled with the mechanism on how to access the funds and use them, particularly on the state side. So I was going to give you some of my lessons
cool.
lessons learned on those. But that was my other question, is so that in the Zone 2, it doesn't negate the 110 per 12,500. This is in addition to, or does this replace that in the Zone 2?
May I? It's in addition to, as a requirement, recognizing that it is going to address a different scenario within Zone 2 than the 12.5 does. And to me,
Still
it's,
have the 12.5.
Yeah,
But on top of it, because.
but it's
such a
educational.
Sensitive area
yeah.
because of the water resources in that area. Does that make sense? You know, Zone 2 was, it's like watershed areas and very sensitive.
Yeah, and like DEP's requirement in a zone 2 is 110 per 10,000, so,
Right,
so the supplemental regs that are
Usually
in all of Hingham are
12.5.
more restrictive than that anyway.
yeah.
And so I think we're saying potentially more restrictive than that in the zone 2.
I think this is-
But, so it's both, is I think the answer.
Yep,
I haven't run the numbers to see how they work out, I just want to know what it was.
right, right.
mandates the requirement of a nitrogen load study with the application. I think that's all
And
it
so if you're in the
does.
zone 2.
In
In a Zone 2. In a Zone 2.
And
So
if we end
I
up,
can already think of several properties where this will be the case that I've looked at over the years, but wherever that boundary is, you're going to have quite a few properties where the zone 2 boundary is going to fall somewhere within the lot. It's not going to be the entire lot.
We've covered that aspect.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And the answer is, if any part of Zone 2 falls within the property, it comes
Then-
under the requirement.
The whole lot comes
Yeah,
into it.
yeah.
Okay. So on the financial assurance end, I've dealt with it a lot at the wastewater treatment plant level with DEP, with the groundwater discharge requirements. And what we spend a lot of time with DEP on is, so 50% can sound like a lot when you say, oh my God, I just put in, on a groundwater discharge permit level, they're typically systems of $1 million and more most of the times we're doing them. So you gotta put up 50, there, I think, you're talking $500,000. But most of the time we look at it and say, well, it's not 50% of the total construction capital value that was put into the system. It's to focus on those components that are the ones that typically go. So, and I had this down in Norwell on a case where, we had to build a pretty fancy wastewater treatment plant building, and DEP was saying, well, you owe 50% of the value of the building. I'm like, well, we're not going to replace the building. We're going to replace the shingles, so we're going to have to do maintenance on it. But but to include the capital cost of the physical construction of that, and so didn't make sense. And so we go through a process with DEP, and then ultimately those typically come out of it, and then it's 50% of a much lower number, and people don't have the heart attack.
I think the board has talked about that, and buildings are not something we wanted to include, nor have we included in the FAMs that we've required, that
Of
we've
the
written into
essential
it as a part.
components.
Yeah, just the
of
essential
the-
Same, like the two biggest costs of the treatment plant buildings for sizable systems,
And the SAS.
and and actually it's all the underground tankage. And typically the underground tankage doesn't fail either. There may need to be maintenance in terms of leaks or seals, but you rarely ever do you rip those concrete tanks out of the ground. They'll way far outlast the soil absorption system and the pumps that are going to fail.
Right, but that's what we're talking about, the essential,
We're talking about the same thing.
yeah.
Okay. Well, DEP, see, but the challenge is it's a negotiation with DEP every time we do it.
It's gonna be a negotiation.
And DEP starts with 50% of the capital costs, and then you have to whittle your way down from there, which can be
Experience, do you know
a
what
frustrating process.
what the percentage of the building cost is versus the whole system? Is it a third or,
Yeah, it's probably close to that,
yeah,
yeah.
okay.
You can use 50.
I guess 50%. But if there's a,
So that was the other thing, is if you are under DEP's requirement, because these regs, I actually haven't done a groundwater discharge permit level 1 in town that I think would be both a plant under your regs and those. If you have one that's both, how do you deal with the financial mechanism?
Easy. Well, we envisioned that, and so what we've done is we allow you to use the state funding towards our requirement.
Good, so it's
You're not
not,
hit up, no.
it's
not a
not
whole
two different,
nother-
two different things, no, it's, because ours are
50%,
increased requirements, so, but the state counts towards that.
and I think DEP has relaxed that a little bit, because there was a big push at the State House over it, but I know a lot of the banks don't like to finance or add funds to those accounts. How do they finance a set of monies that are gonna then sit there and be under quote-unquote someone else's control? So most of that time, that's money that's coming directly out of the.
And we've solved that problem too. We're offering the town of Hingham financing mechanism, the town, to be the bank for you. And so we'll give you a statement. And so those accounts can be held within the town for you. And so it solves that issue of you tracking down a bank that's willing to do that.
So, we all know the bad end of it, where we've got somebody who doesn't do anything. And then you folks have to step in, and it's a nightmare, and I think we've heard about a few of those tonight. How does that mechanism work for those that do their maintenance and upkeep on it? Do they submit their bills as their bills come in from the operator or maintenance? Do they submit those bills on a monthly basis?
Yeah.
And it's addressed at the next board meeting, or do they have to wait to the end of the year? How does that work?
It's a yearly maintenance contract that we would keep a copy of. The same for commercial and residential. We track all those permitting, and if you have an active maintenance contract, you're all set. And we'll keep the escrow account.
And then the operator is actually paid by the town out of that escrow?
No, it's gonna be paid by the owner. We get a copy that you have an active maintenance contract. You give a copy to the Board of Health. Now we know it's active and that you're maintaining your agreement under the innovative alternative technology.
We do that once a year, right?
Yep. We track it for
So
residential too.
they have the ability to act, they don't have to come to you to access the funds. They have the ability to access their funds. You get a record of it at the end of the year, it has to be replenished, or?
Yeah, we wouldn't access your account to pay your maintenance fee. It would be more if your system went into failure.
So I guess that's where I was going. So that was one of the big issues with the state requirements is, a lot of folks would say, I just put aside 50% of the value of everything that's gonna go, but then I can't even touch it to spend it on the maintenance. So that what they tried to work on is, well, I get it, we need to have a set of money set aside so that everybody's comfortable. But how do we access those funds so that the maintenance actually can be done with it?
Yeah, the regulation is open enough that would allow for you to borrow funds towards the maintenance fee, and you have to replenish it.
Right.
And so that would be an administrative decision, whether we would be allowing that routinely. And so I think the homeowner would come in and say, I have this constraint financially, I need to make this particular payment.
Yeah.
And so we'd question and say, okay, this has to be done.
So-
And so just replenish it.
But what you're asking, so if you have a problem or you need some money for the maintenance, would you come in and go to Susan, whoever is our executive health officer, and she therefore goes to the treasurer and says they need this
It
certain
would be an
amount of
open
money?
discussion on what the maintenance would be.
And then
do we have a
does the
certain-
board then have to vote to authorize those funds, and how does that whole
The
mechanism?
board authorizes everything, and we delegate authority to our executive health officer, and we haven't got to that point of whether that will be one of the issues we'll
I
delegate.
can't tell you, I've sat several
Yeah.
times in DEP, I have DEP telling the client, well, I need you to do this, and I'll go, well, you have the money. I'd love to do it, but you have it, and I need it in order to do it, and it just becomes circular, you know what I mean? So having the ability to access it, have a reporting mechanism and a recapitalization on an annual basis or whatever it is, could be.
Or coming in, again, we want to help the people in Hingham
So,
that have these things. And so, if it's going to take you longer than a year to repay it because of some type of significant financial hardship, I would imagine the board's going to entertain that and talk about it as a possibility. We're just getting into this, so and I'm envisioning that we'll probably address these things as a group in the beginning, see what it is that we're seeing, and then delegate as time goes on.
But-
That would be my opinion. I know we haven't talked about that yet.
but I think that we don't have a set system yet. I mean, I think going down the road, we'll probably have a much better, as we get more experienced with this with time. But I think he has a point that we have to have some kind of procedure for accessibility to the money, number one, and number two, if it's used, how then, at what
What
rate
is it
does it
used
get
for? I agree.
refunded? I mean, not refunded, but
Built, yeah.
replenished, thank you.
Yeah.
But I think that we do need to come up with a set, because if all of a sudden something goes bad,
Right.
you need that money now to fix it now.
Has he experienced this in some of the systems that you're familiar with, that they have accessed the money to do?
It's been a fight every time we've needed to access the funds.
Have you received
And
it, though,
that's-
from,
Not every time, no.
wow, okay.
And then the other interesting aspect of it is, it's a major process when a property is gonna transfer ownership that's subject to the agreement. And there's escrow funds in an account held by a town. or estate.
That's not difficult for us.
Well, but it may be for, it may be
Yeah,
for
but
a
it's
homeowner
actually,
who's
yeah,
selling a
because-
property that now,
If if you've put in $50,000 into this escrow, as a homeowner, and now you're selling the house,
becomes a title issue.
Yeah, it's a deed, so
It-
that's.
it-
a
yeah,
does it become part of the deed?
It's definitely a deed.
Yeah, it's a deed restriction. So it's a restrictive
restriction.
covenant that's
We do
on the
those
deed.
now,
So
yeah.
that will come up at the time of closing, just like a bedroom deed restriction, will have a restrictive covenant on this
Okay.
escrow account.
And don't forget, do you remember we have the waivers for your individual home? So we're talking about the condo developments, for the most part, the larger facilities.
I mean, 2,000 gallons a day is pretty small.
Not, that's not a home. That's not a single.
Not a home.
Okay, all right.
I completely agree.
Okay, and so we're looking at the larger facilities, and so typically they have a homeowners association that has this mechanism already built into their structure.
Well, it's not a home
They're
as
familiar
long as
with
they
it.
get the waiver. They come in and get the waiver.
Anyone can come in to get the waiver. Anyone can apply for the waiver, but the waivers, what we've talked about so far, are going to be for those situations where, it's a small amount of money, individual home, that they have the
upgrading.
funds, yeah, that they'd be able to replace that, because it's not that significant. It's really the larger ones, and again, we have a situation now, a piece of property out there on Derby Street, that they haven't had the money. And so they haven't repaired their system in years, 3 years, that we've seen, 3-4 trucks a day removing septic effluent from there, tying up the streets, contaminating the area, in my mind. And why? Why couldn't they just repair it? Well, I'm thinking about, oh geez, maybe they don't have the money. And so from what I've seen, and you look at their escrow, it's underfunded. It was from the beginning. That's why they're not using it. They don't have anything in that. So we have to fix that problem. That's not going to happen again, especially when you've seen 3 different systems, 2 failures, same system, within, 10 years that we've seen. And so I haven't mentioned the property, but, that's awful. So let's fix that.
So as I was saying, the challenge that I've seen is then when somebody goes to sell the property that has one, the Board of Health, and it's fine as long as we know about it and we know how to deal with it, but when that property goes to sell, those funds have to transfer ownership, and the board is in the middle of that. So from a timing perspective, I think we need to understand, you'd want to understand how that's dealt with, so that it doesn't become an unnecessary and an unintended consequence.
No, you got some really good points, and I mean, we just
I
haven't
don't
been
have
in this
much hair left,
business.
and these are the things
We haven't
that
been
I've
in this
lost
business
out.
long enough to have
Unfortunately.
all the answers, but we
Yeah.
really need to,
Yeah.
these are good points.
None of
Thank
our
you.
FAMs so far have sold,
Yeah, and they're usually bigger gallons per day.
Yeah.
We track them.
Yeah, DEP, they have a requirement that you have to notify them more than 30 days before a closing.
We have their
That's-
document, we follow that model.
But then we've had it hold up closings for 60, 90 days or more.
Really? Yeah, we'll act quicker.
Susan, do
What were
you,
the reasons that they denied the money or held the money up?
Yeah.
What was the,
I think the DEP didn't have a good mechanism to access it. The idea when they set it up
As private funding.
was that you have to set this money aside and it has to be there, and it would have to be something catastrophic or major that then would get DEP involved to then access the funds, because you've failed, or the applicant or the owner has failed to actually step up and do it. It was kind of held over here as this reserve, for a major system where that kind of capital money is put in, and that was the mechanism that's been in place forever, but it's not been one that's been that touchable.
yeah.
And it's caused problems, and we saw it, of course, when times are good, you don't hear about it. Boy, that was a real problem in the downturn.
Well, I wrote down those 2 issues.
so
and,
the
we'll
accessibility
work
is
out a
really an
process for
issue.
that, yeah.
And we'll have we have to come up with a system so that it does go with the deed or whatever, right?
Yeah, it already is on the deed, so it's restrictive covenants recorded on the deed. We'll work
Okay.
together to see what the ample notification time for me to either relinquish the funds or get a new deed recording with the new owner, and how that would work at time of closing. So that would be a conversation.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, another thing that we have to consider is, I mean, we're talking some of this time we're talking decades. I don't know if the money that's held in escrow if any interest that's earned on it, or anything, I mean, what, in time, 10 years from now, it's gonna cost a lot more to replace the system than it does when you put it in place, right? So if we say, okay, you have to put $50,000 into the FAM, and then 10 years from now, it's actually it's a lot more, how are we gonna handle that is what we have to figure out
We
also.
haven't approached
We
that
haven't
particular
approached that, but
banking.
Yeah,
the-
but that's
in a
something we
Two
have
different
to come
systems
up
we
with.
can do, yeah.
In a municipality, we are not required to pay interest out on our escrow accounts.
Okay, but I mean, we're gonna have to figure out a way so that we can compensate for the increases in value over time.
We'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
The
So-
way it is now is that the escrow account doesn't change
Okay,
until there's an issue. And so you're talking about a mechanism that it's reassessed on a 5-year basis?
we have to.
We don't
come
do
up-
that, and maybe that's something we
We'll
could
have to
put.
come up with a system.
That would be a regulatory change, I
Yeah,
think.
it
you
would.
know.
That's something we'll look
I guess
at.
the other questions that I'd pose is the purpose of this fund to fully fund 100% of the repairs, or is it a little bit
50.
of a catastrophic
50.
item? Because I think, I mean,
Yeah.
98% of property owners, and maybe 95%, but the vast majority of the property owners, when they have to do maintenance or they have an issue, they take care of it. We always have we can all point to the bad seeds that aren't doing what they should be doing in town, but, so as part of that, I think to your concern about, how do we have to increase that because of more, I think, to me, 50% feels almost punitive as a level to start with. But if you're concerned about how that cost is gonna grow over time, the good news is you have if you kept that amount of money, which, it'll be a large pot of money compared to the cost of the system and the components we have to worry about that would be sitting in a fund. Where most of these folks are gonna have the funds as part of their operating costs to continue to do their maintenance, so they don't really get to that part.
Right, but if
So
you
this
do
is
have a
almost like
catastrophic
This is almost
thing.
like an insurance
Mhm.
policy, so to speak, not necessarily to have a fully funded cash account. Again, that was one of my other questions, is what is the form of this? Is it all in the form of cash accounts?
Yes, it
Or
is.
is it a performance bond, or what is it?
Yeah. And, you mentioned about paying for annual maintenance from the fund. That's such a insignificant amount relative to the replacement of the important components. I just can't see a condo association doing that unless there's some type of significant event that happens. And so we have that safety net. But I think your question, we're getting in the weeds a little bit, but that's okay, because we like weeds. But it's 50%.
I have to live in the weeds.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
Yeah.
whatever you guys vote on, I got to interpret, and I've got to consult my client. So these are the questions I get asked.
But I just see the funds being used for replacement of the system when there's been a failure, catastrophic failure, or an upgrade that needs to be done because of some particular reason. And so the money's there for them. But as far as the ongoing payment of maintenance, I just don't see that. It's so small.
Well, I think that's
what the
part of
money
the
is.
question is what is this 50% of the value of
Well,
the capital fund put aside for? And if it's not that, then
I think it's really mostly for catastrophic events and things that it's a little bit of an insurance to say, okay, if something bad happens, there is cash flow available to get you out of the hole. Am I correct?
There's just
in
two
that?
things I always want to
Go
point
ahead.
out. So, Gabe, we're going to have DEP's money, 25%, that you can use.
if DEP is involved.
If DEP is involved, if it's a groundwater discharge permit, you can, and that's those big numbers.
Yep.
So you can use 25% towards this 50% requirement with Hingham. Then if we're talking about the smaller systems, the residentials that are requiring a FAM if they have an IA, but if you give me a maintenance contract and you're following the rules to the remedial use under DEP, you can get a waiver. So the area that we're talking is kind of in the middle between under the groundwater discharge and kind of, what do we have, 550 gallons? It's that middle that we're trying to monitor.
Yeah, and that's most of the systems that I do in town are, really on the 1,200 to,
Yeah. So-
5, 6, 7,000.
But
So
those
the
are
majority
good
of mine will
points.
fall into
Yeah,
this.
and we'll take into account those questions. We just haven't, and it will be a discussion for the board until we establish protocol on how they're to be handled.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wasn't clear on, what is the status? So this has been voted on and now it's a public period, or what? I wasn't sure on the process.
In a public hearing, which we're currently in, I have experience in this for being on a number of state boards. We're taking in information, and so if we see a material change, we'll probably vote to repost this for comment. Or what I would recommend, if there's just immaterial changes, that we vote to promulgate the regulation. We can always change our minds between, now and the date of promulgation. But we've been working on this 3 years?
2.5, I think.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of comment. We've had Board of Health meetings specifically directed to each section of the regulatory change that we have. And a couple of people, or at least one in the room, that has been to a number of those particular specific items, and the FAM was one of them. And so we've taken a lot of information, and we've heard a lot of similar what you're explaining. So I think that, it depends what we have coming in, but to say this is what we believe is what we should do, and if something comes in on the website later on, we want to change, we can always promulgate these things. We just need 60 days.
So not in effect yet, but you're working toward voting on
I
bringing
would
it
hope
to-
we vote tonight, but I do know I've made some
Okay, could even
changes,
be
and
tonight,
we'll
okay.
talk about
Okay.
those.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Just
not set in
appreciate-
stone,
Yeah.
not yet.
You've been to the website,
And
you've
even
seen what
when
we're
they
talking
do it.
about.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
So,
Thank you, I appreciate your time.
Thanks.
thank you.
Yeah.
Any, yeah.
My name is Mike Fisher, and like Ron, I live at 20 Derby Brook. If this is too technical a question or too long a question, I'll be glad to withdraw. Can we flip back a couple of slides to the diagram,
Of what?
the plot that you had?
The A&R subdivision, subdividing lot?
That one. I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out what the priorities are and where the lines are for competing rules or regulations. Okay, so here's the condition. If we take that lot and we take about the third of that lot to the northeast, that northeast corner of that lot, and draw a line, and everything on the north side of that is zone 2. And so there's a zone 2 line that goes through that lot that cuts off the northeast third of it. Okay, so that lot is 43,560 square feet. It's 1 acre. Will accommodate a 3-bedroom house,
The original lot.
the original lot.
Okay.
If I wanted to dissect that lot, kind of with the diagonal there, and make it 2 lots, new construction, put a 3-bedroom house on each one of those lots with a new septic system. My questions are, given that the lot is 43,560 square feet, with 12,500 square feet for a bedroom, what's the maximum number of bedrooms that could be there? I would think it would be 3 1/4, 3 1/3. Subdivide the lot. Do the same rules apply? Do I divide the sublot, which is now 25,000 square feet or less, 2-bedroom requirement, but if I divide by 12,500 square feet, can I only put 2 bedrooms on each one of the sub-houses? Can I put a septic system on there? If I divide the lot and have 4 bedrooms, 2 different houses with 4 bedrooms, seems to me I've exceeded what the septic allowance is at 12,500 square feet per lot. And how does zone 2 affect any of that?
Madam Chairman, may I answer this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might have to have
Yeah, a couple
you
things.
repeat a few things there, because I think I got a little lost.
There's a couple things, and
Okay.
I've been watching TV, I watch TV a lot, each of the zoning board meetings and the selectmen's meeting. So I know, I've seen you before, yeah. As far as the lot, if any piece of it is within zone 2, this will apply, right?
The whole lot.
The whole lot, because it's a single lot that is going in for an application to be divided. So it needs to be considered prior to division relative to this requirement. That's number one. Second, any property that goes through a 40B process, they could get a waiver from the local regulations, so this wouldn't apply to that particular project, because 40B is a state regulation requirement, and the town of Hingham, they have to fight and say that these regulations we want waived for whatever reason. And then third would be if a project has started and already begun its permitting process, it does not fall under our regulations that may be promulgated, let's say in April or May, because it already predated what these are. And so where you're at Derby Brook, I think, I understand where you've been coming from. We certainly have talked about Derby Brook before. And so if you want to talk about an example relative to the number of bedrooms per lot for 12.5, that's what we're talking about, that's a different discussion that I think that you're looking at, which is a state Title V because of a 40B. And so the numbers you're throwing out there, we can go through that process again, but I think that looking at it from the perspective that I believe you're coming at it from, what's the point on that? I mean, what is it you want to accomplish with the way that we're seeing a division of a lot? And what would you like to have us add or subtract and change relative to what we're doing here? Because this is just a notification aspect for a division of a lot. It's really not putting any requirements on the property that doesn't already exist. It doesn't do any of that. It just notifies the abutters and says, you have to give us a plan, you have to tell us where the wells are in the area, which is important for your area.
And you can't
Septic
take it
system?
out of conformity.
And we're
you're
talking,
splitting
right.
it,
And
right?
what
Or
I
put
was
it into
running the nut.
non-conforming.
oh,
Oh, take it
yeah.
out.
To not, yeah.
You said that right.
Yeah.
The positive.
Can I?
Yeah,
say
go
something?
right ahead.
The numbers that you threw out, this is for the town of Hingham. We are not talking about a 40B. 40B is a different conversation. So if you're just asking a general question for the town of Hingham, so if you had an acre lot, 43,000 square feet about, and cut it in half, that would give you 21,000 square feet. If you go by our 12.5, it's only a one bedroom. Those are Hingham supplementary rules. A 40B, the zoning board speaks for the Board of Health. And these are supplementary rules, local regs. These are not state regulations.
So my question is, if this is not a 40B,
Right.
and you subdivided that lot, you got two one-bedroom houses.
You get one bedroom.
Two one-bedroom houses. And the zone 2 line that cuts across the top, does that have any impact on septic systems that are developed for each one of those two houses?
If I could just pipe in from my comment, my issue would be with the existing house that has a certain number of bedrooms that you're cutting the lot and now you're reducing the amount of land area for that house. But the number of bedrooms inside the house isn't really changing. And so I would, from a Board of Health perspective, more dissuade the actual separation of the lot until the existing house, the number of bedrooms, is somehow adequately addressed. And I don't have a simple mechanism for how that's achieved. Certainly a deed restriction would be what we would legally put onto that, but it has an existing number of bedrooms. And so when we talk about this,
The lot has an existing.
yeah, I would say that we want to get in the process of telling the homeowner, hey, you're putting your existing house into non-compliance. And they would have to come up with a plan saying, well, we're going to take it from 4 bedrooms down to 1. And what does that involve? And explain that in more detail. And I think that's the process that we've envisioned, that we're going to have that discussion.
I understand.
Yeah. That's a tough one, how to reduce a house and the number of
But
bedrooms.
there's no house there.
Yeah, it's all wrong.
Oh, I understand on that property, but that seems to be a 40B issue, but.
That's
yeah.
But if you have, let's just say this, you have this lot, it's 43, it's an acre,
Yep.
and that you have a house, and that house has 3 bedrooms.
Yep.
You have to keep at least 37.5,
Correct.
which is 3 bedrooms, the
Yeah.
12.5
And then
times
you can
3,
give
right?
it- Yeah.
And then the rest can go, but,
Yeah.
I mean, if it's only an acre, that's not even gonna be enough for,
And that's what we're educating the
Right, so
residents
we're
on,
just
that,
trying to say it's
hey,
not
and this is
worth
where
it.
we're going with that, is,
Yeah.
hey, before you do this, you're gonna put your house in non-conforming, and this new lot might not even make the 12.
You're not even getting a
Right.
permit
So-
for that.
And that's what we've had
so,
a problem
so we're saying
before.
that, you know, that's not,
This
does that
is
make
just a
sense?
total
That's what
hang
we're
up.
trying-
I
Yeah.
mean, it all hinges on whether this qualifies
Yeah.
as 40B or not.
Land division, that was back in like June, right?
But this
when
is
we did
talking, we're not talking about 40Bs.
Yeah, that's not
We're
us,
having that
so it's,
conversation.
it's the ZBA.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I hope things work out for you. You're the engineer on that project, aren't you?
I only have, I have one question for you. That's
Cool.
correct. On the issue associated with the,
Say your name and everything.
Gary
for the-
James.
for the-
I'm an engineer who does quite a bit of work in this town. Actually, a lot of these you're already implementing. It's just, all this is doing is formalizing, so I don't have any, there's a lot. But the only thing I have a question mark is on the nitrogen loading issues, are we going to apply that on repairs as well as new construction? Is that gonna, in other words, are you gonna do a nitrogen loading if somebody comes in with a repair in the zone twos? Is that gonna be a requirement of that? That
Madam
was the only
Chairman,
question
I'm
I
just
had.
one member, and I would say yes, because it's an educational process.
Okay.
Okay? And whether we waive that based on the existing site, at least it informs the homeowner of what they're doing and relative to what that will affect the environment. So the regulations do not have a grandfather waiver of that particular regulation on upgrades.
Oh, all right, okay,
Yeah.
that's all, that was the only
Gary,
question,
I
so.
think it gives us a starting base. We
Yeah.
have done this before, and it gives us a feel for how this is gonna work. Whether we, how strict we are with that on repairs, we'll have to,
Cool.
you know,
Well, I think part of it
Determine as a
is
board.
what we're gonna end up with is we'll end up with a discussion relative to each one of these repairs in terms of making the determination as to whether or not there is gonna have to be some nitrogen reduction associated with IA.
And also, I think that, you know, if it is significantly increasing the nitrogen load, if somebody does something different and needs to upgrade, I think that, you know, we'd have to say, you know, it's not gonna be grandfathered in, like if you're gonna do a real big,
Well, the only place, the place I can really see this becoming
Addition.
an issue is you're gonna see in some of these 10,000 square foot lots down in South Hingham. You're gonna start seeing some real issues relative to the nitrogen loading. I mean, we've all gone
Gary,
through it.
And I would say that every one of those projects, you're already coming in talking about an IA system because of 12.
We already are.
Okay.
I know we are, so it's nothing new, but.
No, it's not new. It's old.
No,
It's
it is,
old.
it is old, but I think you're gonna start seeing a few more IAs now. But I don't see that as a real issue.
No,
But
those
I-
numbers you can put on your
I
plan.
don't see
I
any
think
new
that
ideas.
there's that
Not one.
much, there's not that really anything significant that we're changing. I think when we were talking about it, we're trying to more clearly define it or delineate it to the homeowners, what the problems are. Does that make sense? That you can't take a house out of conformity when you split a lot or whatever, things like that, to really
We've
make it.
we've already gone through that argument, and I think, and this is just gonna formalize it, but you've already
Right.
been implementing that as a requirement.
Yeah,
I mean, kind of in a roundabout way. So all this does is just formalize that.
Yes.
What
Yeah, I
we
think
have
you're right.
already been implementing.
yep.
We've been doing this for years.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
You know, driveway pervious,
Right.
pavers and seashells and things.
Oh, yes. I know
Solves the
we have.
problem, yeah.
No, I don't
So we've
see,
been doing
I
this
don't
for
see
a
this
while.
as a real, that was the only question I had is
Yeah, I
if we're
think-
going to
we're
start
gonna-
doing that, then I think
So
you're
that's
right.
why I can't see any more IA systems because of that requirement, not a one.
I don't think it's gonna trigger as much septic system design, but I think that we're gonna see it in the building permit, when you increase the footprint of your dwelling.
Yeah.
That's where you're gonna see it,
Yeah,
not
that's
in
what
your
you- yeah.
repairs.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too with the Title V, the Title V inspections, except for the new wells, I really, most of the time, Sue, when we get involved in these, you're gonna end up with a repair, and especially if you're going to increase, because now it's an upgrade. So, I mean, now you're gonna have to come into full compliance with the regulations, and the Title V is really, I mean, unless you already had a design for multiple units or, you know, larger bedrooms than what's already in the house, I don't,
We have the 250-foot setback, but a lot of these, we don't have any information in the setback, I mean, the setbacks to the septic system.
Yeah.
So we're just, you're in the new
But the well,
I-
I can understand the well.
Yeah, the
Because the well permit does not require that you do a Title V, so that's not a
And Gary, this
problem.
covers what we've seen, and I know that Peter, certainly we've seen it, where you have a house and they're developing it, and they're putting in all these kind of weird rooms and bonus rooms, and so the footprint has expanded, but they haven't change the number of bedrooms. They've been calling them different things. And so this is going to catch those, at least trigger it, that, let's look at a Title V when you're expanding these smaller lots in a significant, 33% is a significant.
I think the
Development of the
33% is going to catch a lot of them. I believe the 33% will catch a lot of them. But other than that, I really don't see an awful lot here, but that's
Well,
fine.
50%,
Thank
I
you.
mean, you don't see 50%, you don't see projects that increase the square footage by 50%, ever, really. We're in that range, what's the average increase in the footprint of a remodeled house? What would
Well,
that be?
no, unless
I guess you're not an expert on that, but-
unless it's a tear down. If it's a tear down, though.
Tear down's a different issue, that's
Yeah.
that's gonna trigger the Title V inspection regardless, but we're
Yeah.
just talking about, Peter would probably
Yeah.
know what a construction project is. I just don't think this
Well,
is
it
gonna
used-
affect that
It used
much.
to be a lower number, now it's a higher number.
Yeah.
Get up
Oh,
as high as
no, I think
50%.
I think some of the tear downs, you're gonna see
Oh,
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, tear downs, definitely.
yeah, you're gonna see that. But other than that, I don't have any real big
So we
issues.
did a good job?
By the way, we didn't subdivide that parcel.
You recognize the parcel?
Yes, I recognize the parcel.
Do you guys have anybody else? I can't see mine. Here, any other comments? Questions?
Fabulous.
Good.
Madam
Yep.
Chairman, I have some changes that I'd like to put into the regulations. And they're
want me to
in
bring-
green in the copies that we have. If we're going to continue with the public hearing, I think that, Madam Chairman, hand was raised in the back.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I apologize, I was interested in what they thought there was.
Susan is going to,
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
we're going to project them.
cool.
With the green? Yep.
Oh, no.
Oh, no,
Oh, no, he's
sorry.
talking about the things that little emails, the emails we got.
I read mine. I heard some of the comments.
Hold on. Okay. A.W. Perry.
You want to read them,
Interview.
Madam Chairman? Why don't we do that, since we only have two?
Okay, well, one
I have not
one
read
is quite
them.
long.
I have not read them.
What is SWSM properties? Oh, that's Derby Street, okay. So, well, Derby Street sent a fairly lengthy memo.
I haven't read it.
And I haven't even read it really, except that they go into specific sections, making,
Listen, the first one, we can go through these real simple. The first one, what they're saying is that you cannot discharge more than 110 gallons per 12.5 unless approved by the board. The board could always grant a variance at any point for that. That is unneeded. It's implied within the regulation. So as far as the recommended section to Section 8G, it doesn't mean anything, because the board can already do that.
just a second, let me just see these. I just want to go see what we have
Peter,
written
want to do the
down.
next one, and I'll do the next one after that?
Section
Let's see what it,
Where are you, Kurt?
He's right on the, oh.
Are you on the Derby Street letter?
On the Derby Street,
yeah,
letter. They, but they want to know what
That's
the
okay,
comments
you don't
were.
have to read it far, but as long as it'll be on the website or whatever,
Yeah.
I can get it that way.
Susan, do you have a
I'll
copy?
give you a copy of
I'll get you a
this.
copy tomorrow. I didn't have
Give
a
you-
copy of this, I was just given this, so I haven't even had a chance to read it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even looked at it. It's-
The proposed, I'm gonna read the second one. The proposed regulations are more conservative than Title V. Yes, they are. They have been.
Is this 110,000 or 110 gallons? 110.
It's 110 gallons. They
This
have.
says 100 and.
I know they have a mistake in there, but I know what they implied.
110,000.
Yeah, they made a mistake.
I'm like, what is this?
Yeah, you fixed it. You are incredible.
That's restricted.
This, it's, what's
Did you hear
that?
what he said?
No, I didn't hear. What did you say?
That would have been less.
Yes, it would have been. It was like really, but can I just, this is gonna have to go, we're gonna have to go step by step, and that's.
Yeah, I'm doing it
the
now.
next term. You're gonna do it now?
Yeah, we can all
Okay.
do it. It's not that
All right.
complex, these things.
Okay.
Yep. So the second one, the proposed regulations are more conservative than Title V. Yes, they are. And DEP, Title V, allow systems with design flow of greater than 2,000 gallons per day to be based on the groundwater model to determine the required vertical separation. Well, we don't do that. We have a different scenario in Hingham relative to groundwater levels and the distances, which are 6.9, 6.12 now, 6.12A. And you would like us to incorporate that into the DEP. This was an entire meeting that we talked about 6.9, 6.12. Remember that?
Yeah.
And we had engineers come in and talk to us about that. And they thought that our Hingham regulation was helpful. And it's not a significant change between the two. It was 5 foot relative to 6 foot. So do we want to go to the DEP standard on that and eliminate 6.9 and 6.12? Because, you know, a lot of times we waive that variance. I would say, if I can keep talking, that is the variance that we waive most often.
Yeah.
Yeah, routinely. So it's almost as though this
But
question.
I don't think we should
Remove it.
Remove it.
It makes you aware of it, and again, the board has typically waived that
when they need
if there isn't mounding and some of these
Yeah,
other
with-
issues.
With fairly strict conditions,
Yeah, well, reasonable conditions.
reasonable.
Yeah, and I know mounding is one of those. So I hear what they're saying. We talked about this for an entire meeting, and I think, Gary, you were at that meeting.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah.
Yes, I was.
So we can come back to that. For properties with limited land area that have been determined to have appropriate levels for their SAS, the ability to use the space between the trenches in the area is critical and permitted by Title V. We strongly encourage the Board of Health to allow the Title V approach with projects in Hingham. And I believe that we allow for
in that South Hingham.
with a variance for using the spaces between trenches.
That's in the South Hingham Overlay District.
Yes, he's just talking about the South Hingham.
Well, I would say within Hingham, because we're dealing with Hingham. It's
Yeah.
irrelevant that they're talking about the South Hingham Overlay District. It would be for anywhere within Hingham. I mean, that's a variance I believe we've granted before.
We have,
And,
we have.
yeah,
But
yeah.
what they're saying is they don't think it should have to be a variance, right? They just think that we should.
They have
go
to
with
come
the
in and talk
DEP.
This is-
about it.
So
But I
this is, say, because I haven't read it yet, so this is addressing our current regulations
It
and
says
saying
here,
that
the
we
area
shouldn't have them?
between said trenches shall not be used for part of the reserve area in,
Right.
is this seven,
But we grant
section
variances to
7K.
that to allow that in certain circumstances.
Right.
So what they want to do is remove it altogether for their, I guess, because they're talking about the South Hingham Overlay District, it's their project that they're most concerned about. I would say, we need to have a town-wide standard, not just in certain overlay districts. And so if they want to use the space between the trenches, come in and talk to us about it. If this is.
Especially that.
Yeah, I just would
that.
point out, there is a property in the South Hingham Overlay District that has had a number of failures over the years. And so with that particular project, I probably wouldn't grant a variance only because of the poor history they've had to date.
Right, and they'd have to use it again. I mean, I don't want them to use that again.
The last one.
Okay, section 8B, hold on a second.
A FAM. While the Board of Health is proposing a FAM for all plant permit applications, State Title V provides DEP the ability, but not the requirement, to require a FAM if it determines one is necessary to ensure compliance with its permit. I believe that is false, that a FAM is required on state DEP groundwater discharge permit applications. Now, whether they waive those or give a variance, that might be something they do, but I believe it is I know it's a requirement.
Under the DEP groundwater discharge permit.
Yes. We would encourage the board to also have this permit and the flexibility to determine if a FAM should be required. So I think this is in error, what they're saying
They're
regardless.
saying it's not required, and
I know, but it is.
required.
It is
Required.
required. It's
It is
under a
required.
groundwater discharge permit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is required. Susan,
Can I have,
yeah,
can
there
I
are
have
two
one
on
of
the back.
those? I don't before we go, just so I can scan it and give a
Yeah.
copy to anybody who's asking
read it?
tomorrow.
Can you stand sharing with me?
Oh, yeah, no, I want you.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Thank you.
You have to read, though.
I'm just looking. Okay, section 8D. I just want to get these sections.
They're all eights.
Yes, I know. D4, just so we know. So we're talking right here. The town proposal suggests a 100-foot separation of a soil SAS and treatment unit from the property boundary.
Title V.
V requires 10 feet separation which is far less restrictive and accommodates the ability to use the greatest amount of land determined to be acceptable for SAS systems based on the percolation tests and other groundwater monitoring as outlined in the supplementary regulation. Increasing the buffer zone to 100 feet could have a catastrophic impact on new development in areas with land constraints. We strongly recommend the town reduce the required 100-foot separation to the DEP standard. I absolutely disagree with that. I think that we should, if it's a real problem, they can come in and talk to us. But I think that in order to prevent any
We
kind
ran
of.
into that at
It's a
There was
separation
a
from
thing up on- off of
from the
High
treatment
Street?
plant.
Penniman Hill.
Yeah, from
Yeah.
Penniman, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
not from a wetland, which we certainly would never do. It's not from
Right.
a drain or anything. It's from the actual treatment system itself.
I mean, there's a substantial noise associated with those, and put it in a neighborhood like that, and we have a lot of those situations.
Yeah,
I wouldn't reduce that.
yeah, I wouldn't reduce it
Because they
either.
come in, they do maintenance on the system, they repair the
Absolutely,
filters and
yeah.
that one. We talked
Yeah.
about that, yeah.
Yeah.
It is it's an interesting one, but I wouldn't recommend we make that change. And again, they can ask for a variance.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Well, actually, we varied
I think we did
that.
get a variance. Isn't
We
it
varied
75
that.
feet? Yeah, we varied that one, yeah. We did vary that one. We
We
gave it a
made
variance.
some changes in the house, the
And the
building.
landscape,
Yeah,
yeah, not made them, they suggested they would make that, and you're
You're
right.
talking
the
about
tree-
Penniman Hill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember they
We
didn't
did,
have the
yeah.
square footage to the road.
Right,
Yeah.
the road from
And
the
so
drain.
we granted that,
the
but we
street
said,
drain.
put a buffer in with the neighbor.
Yeah.
Right.
So that actually works better than to eliminate the requirement, then
Yeah.
you don't know what's being built there,
yeah.
or
Okay.
you're unhappy with what's being built there.
Okay, section 8G. Per section 8B referenced above, DEP is not obligated to require a FAM unless one is deemed necessary. Is that true?
It's my understanding that DEP has it within the groundwater discharge permit, and it's a requirement.
I
They
think
can
it
waive
is.
it, or they can vary it, as anyone can, so can we.
Right.
So,
If a FAM is deemed necessary by DEP, it requires 25% of the estimated construction costs of the plant. This requirement, while it has the possibility of representing a significant financial contribution, is far less onerous than the FAM proposed by the town. We would like to express our concern over the significance of this requirement. Putting 50% of the cost of all sewer systems on a property, as well as the cost of the annual operation of the facility, into a cash account is likely to be untenable for future development. We strongly urge the town to consider providing alternative methods of providing a security and to reduce the scope of the infrastructure for which a FAM is required.
let's see what they come up with.
Uh,
I'd entertain what they have for an alternative.
If they want to take out the buildings, we'll discuss it with them.
Well, and.
No, you guys already stated that earlier this
Yeah,
evening.
and you
But
remember-
the 25% is not enough to cover any real major problem if, and these, most of these systems are big, right?
This is Derby Street Shops.
Right, that's what I'm saying, and so they have to have
The
that
25% is
cash flow
proven
available.
inadequate for
Yeah,
at
it is
least
not
one
adequate
property.
for when they have a real problem, right? And we've seen that already.
3 times.
But I mentioned the
3 times wrong.
presentation, there has been a development that has funded this over time, and so that's an option. There are different mechanisms, they can come up with an alternative, and I remember that was discussed at one of the meetings, in lieu of an escrow amount. Certainly would entertain it, as long as there's financial funds available within a short order to make a repair and emergency system. I would just point out that there is a property in South Hingham that has had and still has a catastrophic failure and is pumping every day, in which they had adequate funds within their FAM. We wouldn't be seeing that health hazard go on day after day after day. And so this, if it were 50%, might have made a difference in how that property has handled its problems.
Then they're saying, this same section, G2, the requirement that any maintenance, upgrade, or alteration to an existing wastewater treatment plant would require a review of the FAM also raises concern.
Yeah.
This section has the potential to essentially disincentivize owners from making improvements to an existing plant and related systems for fear of reopening and increasing the FAM requirements. Property owners who make continued improvements to their facilities should not be penalized further by being required to set aside additional funds as a result of their improvements.
And I agree. We don't want to do that. And the regulation says it has to be a material change. But let's talk about this for a second. Let's say the material change is significantly material, that they have a different system altogether that is significantly more expensive, and the old technology they have been using, they've abandoned. We have to have a fan that's going to cover the replacement of what's real, as opposed to what was existing 20 years ago that was just a fraction of what it would cost to replace one of these newer systems. And I don't see the financial element being that significant between the technology of what they had and what it is now, because technology is getting cheaper. It's not getting more expensive, it's getting more efficient. But it doesn't seem like it's getting more expensive because more people utilizing these things are becoming the norm. Am I wrong on that one?
No, I understand.
No.
Okay, it is our hope that in reviewing the proposed regulations and public comments that the board will also be coordinating closely with DEP to ensure the town and state are aligned in the handling of new and existing wastewater treatment systems. As a long-term property owner in Hingham, we ask that the Board of Health consider properties currently operating with a wastewater treatment system separately from newly proposed developments, as the decision process for these two situations can often be quite different. Lastly, we would like to ask the board to consider the other mechanisms, and then parentheses, such as default provisions from financial institutions, bad parentheses, that serve as protection against the town having to step in to operate a private existing wastewater treatment system before enacting the onerous FAM requirements that are currently contemplated. Well,
And so I guess the onerous is the difference between a 25% requirement and a 50%. That's what we're talking about. I think they're trying to make the argument that DEP in some scenarios doesn't require the 25%, so it's between 0 and 50. That's a huge difference. I mean, that's overwhelming. But we're talking about the difference between a 25 and a 50. You know, it's something they can come in and ask for, if they have some type of
issue, but
plan that's reasonable to get a waiver on something like that.
And that's something the board would entertain in a discussion.
Yeah.
It's not for something to change our regulations on.
I agree. So they're all great points. They all have to do with a FAM and treatment systems, and they all have to do with a plant that's already permitted, as far as I understand. So.
But we keep the regulation and let them ask for relief if they need it.
Yeah.
We'll listen, because we can't, I don't feel we can lessen the 50%.
Well, we've had experts come in and suggest that 50% is the appropriate number, that
Yeah.
the 25% from the state is insufficient.
It's not, it's insufficient.
That's what we had as far as testimony, and I know that was in August or September.
Okay, so,
And that was-
this is the same message from Richard Beal from A.W. Perry. He says, "We are still vetting the proposed changes and are concerned with the potential adverse effects on existing and new development within Hingham. We believe that state regs currently provide adequate capital escrow funding for treatment plants. Additional upfront capital requirements may limit new development by making projects overly financially burdensome. This could present an issue for project financing as lenders evaluate an additional capital contribution that provides no return on investment. Beyond existing DEP funding requirements, scheduled regular contributions to a capital fund through an owners association to build additional repair/replacement equity is the current accepted norm and an acceptable method to ensure sufficient capital escrow funds. In addition, we feel Hingham's existing septic rules and regulations provide increased environmental protections beyond state requirements. Thank you for your consideration, Richard P.
Good point
Beal."
there, so certainly would listen to that.
In terms of the disincentive?
No, the capitalization over time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's right. But that's what I was saying with
Yeah.
we have it in escrow, and if the costs increase over time.
Same comment as the last.
But
Letter.
generally, it's
Yeah.
just that it's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think that the 25% is just not enough.
Insufficient?
It's not sufficient to cover any major problem.
I agree. I know we talked about this, again, at that one meeting that was entirely on FAMs. And that was one of the major issues, and everyone agreed. There was one individual that thought that 25% was adequate, or he just, for his project, didn't like the fact it was gonna cost more money. I remember that.
Okay?
So we took in the public comment on the written comments, and again, those will still be accepted by the board until the regulations go into effect. Can I go through my suggested changes?
On supplementary
Is that on
rule,
there?
Yeah, it's right up there, the green stuff.
can you
What green
guide
stuff?
me to the page? I don't have the, I can't see the page.
I know the first one is purpose, yeah. And so this is just a language change, immaterial as far as a purpose. And so those are the green. Susan, I can't see it that well. Can you read it for us?
What page are you on there?
It's on page 2 or 3 or something.
All right, I got so many copies of
The
these.
purpose,
books.
it's the,
It's the purpose.
if
There
you
it
look in
is.
your folders,
Yep,
it's the
yep, the
current,
green.
right?
Yeah, we can do the green easy by.
I
it shows
printed
up
color,
there.
yeah. Do you want to read it, or you want me to read it?
I can read it, just that in our copies, I know green is hard to read through.
It should be okay.
No, I can read it. The purpose of these supplementary rules and regulations is to bring additional clarity and applicable protection in applying State Environmental Code, Title V regulations
In Hingham.
in Hingham that takes into account the local environmental conditions and administrative processes that are specific to the town of Hingham. That's the purpose of why we're doing these regs.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the two things, we have a lot of environmental elements, and certainly the FAM is part of an administrative process.
And then we have the.
Oh,
the
the bedroom count. By the way, Peter, is that right? I know that we had talked about various openings to a room.
Yeah.
We
Is
put
it a
60
5
inches.
foot or a 4 foot? I think it is. I think Lizzie did catch that. It is a 5 foot.
Yeah, it's 5 foot.
I think we should stick with 5 feet.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
That's on page 4, Susan?
yeah.
Oh, there, they got it up on the screen.
Yep, I'm following.
Okay. And then page 10 is the next green one, which is just taking out the seepage pit. That was the cesspool that we were
What you
talking
do.
about. Okay, page 12. Nitrogen load analysis that calculates total nitrogen.
So no more cesspools.
No more cesspools.
Well, it
Okay,
is.
we're not gonna be putting in anymore. So, and everything
Page
else is
12,
just
you
on
already addressed that.
15, page 15. Not exceed 10, should be designed so that the proposed discharge will not exceed 10 milligrams per liter total nitrogen load at the property, at the property?
At the property, right.
On-
Boundary is crossed out, but it's not in green.
At the property it's not supposed to have boundary in there?
It's supposed to be at the lot. So 10 milligrams per liter total nitrogen
Load,
load at the lot.
At the property lot?
No, at the lot.
at the lot located entirely or partially?
Yeah, at the
Okay.
lot. And lot here is it's plural and it should be singular.
Okay,
Yeah.
the lot located.
Yeah.
Okay, entirely or partially in
Okay.
printed area
Yeah, that
designated.
was- yeah.
Okay. I want to just keep moving along because we're really getting late.
Okay.
All right, and page 19, you got, again, another septic issue, so we took
Sewer,
that
yeah,
out.
cesspool.
And there would be,
Cesspool, excuse me,
that would be renumbered, obviously.
yeah. And is there anything else?
Okay.
Is that
I think
it?
when you extract
know.
it, it'll renumber. Yeah.
Okay.
And again, you can't do septic system pits, or septic.
Okay, and then the last thing is just page 31, which is the blend, that's it. Right?
Was the word portable that is within something that is being removed?
Portable or potable?
Potable. Where is that on that? Is near the end.
Page 26.
Page 26. There it is.
Oh, okay.
Yep, all wells.
And all wells.
Yeah, so it's,
Put the word all.
well,
in
no,
there.
no, no, it
You mean-
just, it's just
Anyway,
wells.
For
Just
irrigation wells as well.
Just
as
wells, it's
potable
just wells.
Yeah,
And it,
As well as
thermal,
thermal, yeah.
okay,
Okay, good.
geothermal.
okay.
Yep.
Any more comments, suggestions, questions? Do I need to say that we're closing? the public
No,
meeting?
I think that what we would do within public comment, if I may, make a motion?
Can we make a motion?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I move to establish an updated version of the proposed supplementary rules and regulations for the disposal of sanitary sewage as amended today's date. Those changes we talked about, January 21st, 2020, that we have here. I don't believe I would make any other changes, even based on the 2 letters we had come in and the comments. Those would be the recommendations that I would make. I think that that was adequately. So we have an updated version, and then from there, we can decide whether we're going to promulgate it or not.
Okay,
So that would be my motion.
I'll second that.
okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right,
So now, Madam Chairman?
so
It's
now,
whether you want to promulgate these, which is taking it to the next level, which requires some town notifications, some public information in the newspaper, and a certain date that these would go into effect, recognizing that we could, revisit this at any point. If someone were to do that, I mean, I'd suggest we go there.
do we need to make it as a motion?
Sure, I think the most senior member would love to do that.
Go for it.
I'm not the senior member.
Are you the senior member?
Tell me your thoughts again on the promulgation.
Well, right now, we have a draft, right?
Yeah.
And we've approved the draft, and I would say that we vote to promulgate these regulations, and on the effective date is all you need to kind of fill in. And that would be, I'd recommend April 1st or May
April 1st.
1st or something like that, yeah.
April
April.
1st.
Yeah.
April 1st? Yep. Okay.
Sure, I propose that motion to promulgate the
The
rules and
new
regulations, the updated rules and regulations to take effect
April 1st?
April 1st, 2020.
I would second that motion for discussion.
Okay. Any discussion? Barring no discussion?
Well, I have.
Oh, you do
I know it's late, but I would just point out to the board, I want to thank the people that preceded us. I mean, Bruce Capman did a lot of this work,
Yeah,
and also the attorney that he had working with him through a lot of this. So, this isn't just us, these changes. This is 20 years' worth of amendments that were put into a system, like, we're going to do this at some point, we're going to do it. And all we did was we took that information, made a couple of, changes that we're familiar with, and just, talked about it for the past 3 years with the public to get their, to gauge their approval of this stuff. So I just want to say to the board, this has been a lot of work. I appreciate,
Yeah.
the arguments that we've had. I don't agree with, everything, but, as far as the board is concerned, I support what we've done.
yeah.
And so I'm pleased by the process, and I appreciate
Yeah, well, you, on that,
Peter's
Kirk, and
guidance and Lizzie, your guidance, too.
Yeah, and I'd like to recognize Steve White in his contribution, who was a longstanding member of the board. I hope I'm not leaving anyone out, but Steve comes directly to mind.
Well,
Susan.
Bruce Capman, yeah.
And Bruce, sure.
Susan
And Susan.
and Betty.
And you,
But-
Kirk, for all your work, so.
You put a lot
And
of
Lizzie,
effort into
so-
this. I haven't, that you have.
I think it's all in the best interest of Hingham, and it'll make a better town, a better board.
Yeah. And,
We'll all benefit from it.
and while we're still in discussion, what we got in from the letters were really mostly about the FAM.
Right.
So I think that we need to go through, now that we're going to put this requirement in there, we've talked about developing those processes and procedures for FAMs. We've actually been working on that for a while. But, I've been kind of pushing, let's get that done. And so maybe
We
we can
gotta
have
put
that.
some more things, processes
Right.
into place.
But we've been kind of putting that off a little bit,
Yeah.
yeah.
We started the conversation with the town accountant already. We can put that into.
Okay, all right. Barring any further discussion? Can we take a vote on the motion?
ready.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Cool, unanimous.
All right,
Fabulous.
So-
Thank you, Peter.
now, so these poor gentlemen can go home and go to bed. May I close the
Thank you.
public hearing?
Thank you. And what time do you close it?
Closing it at 9:03. All right, again, we're closing the public hearing on the supplementary rules and regulations at 9:03. One more time, right? We're closing the public hearing,
Thanks for coming, Gary.
9:03. Okay,
Thanks for staying, you have to stay.
Beechwood, because you haven't done bedroom guidelines yet.
Oh, why don't we do, change and do Beechwood
You-
first, then Title
you want,
V?
yes, okay, so we'll change the order.
Can I have the?
Only because of the lateness of it.
Yes, exactly. We need to go ahead with
I mean, I
1, 2,
recognize
and
that.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, 'cause
Beechwood
we're missing
Circle,
some.
which is previously Oakwood, right?
We went through
Oh,
all.
okay.
Isn't that nice of the chair to move your topic up?
Stuff.
That way you have to sit through our bedroom count discussion. Because you probably have something to say about that.
1, 2, 3, Beechwood Circle, which used to be Oakwood? Is that right? What was it? Or is it
It was 4 Oakwood Circle.
4 Oakwood
Yeah, I got Oakwood
Circle?
Circle.
Yeah, it's now Beechwood. We have to come up with a name for the road.
Well, what's Beechwood Circle?
That's the name of the road.
That is the name of the road, okay. But it's off of, or was part
It's
of?
off of Oakwood Circle.
Off of Oakwood Circle. Okay. Cellar floor variance. Wait a minute, I have
That's
this
the
somewhere.
final one.
Where do I have this in my,
It's your final?
there it is.
Cool. I've seen the paperwork on this. It's fairly light. It's just an application. Yeah.
All right. Sorry, there is way too much paperwork here.
Gary, he wants you to participate.
You want you to participate, okay. So we have like 3 different applications for 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3 Beechwood.
Yeah, it's 3 seconds.
Notifications. Some
What
question I
are-
heard
what are
earlier.
those?
There was some,
Those are-
she's going through, and so I think there was some issue with that. You may want to ask her.
Wait, don't say anything until she's finished counting.
No,
Yeah, before we get into it.
I'm just having trouble locating like 5 certified and green cards. Did you check this list to be sure everyone on the abutters list was received? Because I'm missing, I circled the ones I don't have a green card, and I can't find a certified.
I don't have my glasses. I'm never
So,
gonna-
I just think I don't have the cards. These road names didn't change.
I don't know, who are we
So I'm missing
I don't know. I'm going to hear
I
about
haven't
it.
heard.
Yeah. But he's here.
3 Ledgewood. Yeah,
I listened to his presentation.
Same person, 2 different addresses, a couple of issues.
This was the list that we got from,
right, but I'm saying I can't find this certified for 3 Ledgewood, 34 Rockwood. I've gone through it a couple times, and this is everything you gave us. And 32 Rockwood. So the girls in the office went through everything.
Make the presentation. Because it might be straightforward.
The other thing
Green
is
card
saying,
and the receipts.
Yeah, this is all
Ones that have
matched.
Simple check mark next to
but
it.
this is
But we can't vote on it.
350
We don't have
feet.
everything.
I don't think
We
so.
only
We
require
can
for
over-
250,
We
so
can,
they
we can do
ran
anything,
this.
but they'll get mad at us for voting.
So there could be an issue that about 5 of the butters may have not have been notified.
Is Gary comfortable with those,
I don't
those
know.
not coming in? Yeah.
I mean, I'm not shocked that the green cards didn't come in.
I'm not shocked here, but we should at least
You
have
should
this
have-
as a
You should
backup.
have the white.
Right.
You should have the white slips.
Right.
That's what I don't understand.
And I can't find them. There's 5 addresses. So if you
I
want
mean,
it.
I'll have to go back and look at my copy.
And I'll
see.
have to go review this exactly tomorrow again, but perhaps I can suggest that we hear him, and if you feel that you could take a vote, you could make it condition that all
We're
the
able to
abutters
find the-
within 250 feet have been notified of tonight's hearing.
Okay. How many butters?
Or you,
Oh, there's quite a
Or,
few.
or allow them to participate, yeah, but we'll see what it's, what the project, what he's suggesting, it might be straightforward.
It's quite a few, only because it's the entire 22-acre parcel.
and out of this is the list of the 300-foot abutters, he only really had to notify 250, and I'm only missing 5. We can go through tomorrow and recheck them and see if he has them,
Okay.
but I would suggest you hear the,
Yeah. I'd be happy to
and
hear it.
then
Yeah, let's
make a
hear what we
decision, yeah.
Okay. Floor is yours.
It's a pretty simple, this was the final one. We had actually discussed this when we did the original variances or the original waivers associated with the proposed IA system on this lot. And these are the 3 lots. They're all located pretty much right around the cul-de-sac, right at the top. And they're right at the top of the ridge. There's exposed ledge here, there's exposed ledge there, there's exposed ledge on both of them. So pretty much, we will be implementing the WR gray system. It's pretty much a standard application. They will all daylight by gravity. Daylights for all of the systems are all of the collection systems and the cellar floor drains, the under drains. Yeah.
Where's the system on here? Down.
The under drain is right here, right under the
No,
floor.
there's a separate
No,
system.
no, I mean.
Oh,
Yeah, you can't see it
the-
on
Is
there.
it on the map?
oh, it's,
Sorry.
no. it's
Is it
all right.
between the 2
There we
farmland
go.
houses?
It is over here.
Oh, there it is, okay,
Yes.
all right, got it, sorry.
Yeah,
Where's 3A, Gary?
3 is right here.
No, no.
Oh, 3A is up
3A.
here, up here.
Up there,
Yeah,
okay.
it's up there.
So 2 of the lots don't require this variance,
Well,
or you haven't come in yet.
that was the existing house.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And this one was actually above, we kind of moved it a little bit,
but doesn't require this variance.
didn't require the waiver. No,
What
that
about
one's
the one by
actually,
the street, isn't that one down by the street?
that's an existing house.
Existing.
so it's
Yeah.
already,
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one, actually the basement was about 1.5 feet above grade.
So just those 3 in the back.
Yeah,
I like
so
the
it's-
daylight part.
So what, are you putting full cellars in those?
Yeah, he is putting
it's a
full
false
basement.
cellar.
Full.
Oh,
Full-
full
full
cellar,
cellar.
basically.
No, full basement.
Um,
But they're right on the peak, right on the top of the ridge.
So a lot of blasting then.
Yeah. Fire department loves us.
I remember when you came in on this, we discovered, was it Windjammer in the back, that they have private wells?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
all do.
And so, I hope there's no Windjammer as one of those green ones that hasn't
No,
come in.
no,
Okay.
they're all-
They're gonna complain about, I would imagine they would complain about the potential of groundwater migration changing because of blasting. Seems like most projects do that. Oh, you get the fudge ones.
Yeah, go ahead, keep talking.
Yeah.
What are you doing for drainage collection on the impervious areas there, Gary? Where's it all going?
It's pretty much all going out towards the, right now it's going here, in here, this is the basin. Back of the houses is all going to a basin that's located here. And this is collecting from the 2 driveways. So it's either going into the conservation land over on the opposite side of 3A, or it's going down, back this way, down towards, which is actually, there's a culvert that crosses 228, right where you enter into Rockwood, just the other side of the library.
Yeah, it goes all the way down there?
That goes all the way down there, yeah, and then.
It is high, Peter, on this property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that original house that's there, they aren't gonna get much of the drainage? I don't
No.
know how the contours of the
No,
property.
Well, he's got some,
no, it pretty much all goes down this way. Everything comes back towards Oakwood, and then it is either redirected here or goes over on the other side. Like I said, the ridge is pretty much like right here. And all of the houses are pretty much This actually, there used to be this driveway used to come right down through here. So a lot of that old driveway has been removed. So all of the impervious all of the runoff associated with that impervious is now being directed back towards groundwater. Although groundwater sources in this are pretty limited because, except for a few areas, ledge is either at the surface or within about 3 feet of grade.
Madam Chairman, I know that we have a waterproofing system that we've used for years. It's something that's posted, and you're following that,
Yeah.
because you've used it a number of times. So I'm not as concerned about that. And again, I'm going to go back to what we typically hear when ledge is being removed is groundwater migration. And so you do have neighbors that have their own water supply on well water. All of them have been notified that this project is, okay. Because even if you did crawl spaces, you still have to blast?
We'd still have to blast, yeah. We've already blasted now. We've already blasted to date.
You have?
Oh, yeah, we already have. Yeah. the
Fire
road-
department is,
Fire department's
You got
been
all
there.
that?
Oh, yeah,
Oh.
that's what I'm saying. They're pretty happy with me between this and Canterbury. Yeah.
but you haven't blasted all the way down in case we don't give you the variance?
No, but we blasted for the road.
Oh, for that, not for the,
yeah.
not for the foundations.
No, and then we blasted for the,
All in front, though.
yeah, and for the stormwater. But, if you look at it, I mean, pretty much, all of this water will continue to just flow back towards the
You're
left.
saying the windjammer,
Yeah.
again, that's probably an area dependent on private wells, And so, about 4 or 5 houses there, and I don't see anyone in the audience from that area.
Do they have access to town water, any of those houses?
No,
No?
there's no.
Windjammer?
Yeah.
No, they didn't have any. They have those
There's no
sawmills.
town water going down
No,
3A?
there's no town water going up 3A. It comes up Rockwood and then goes around. It's just,
Yeah.
I think what happens, it cuts across Summer. I think that's what happens, because that line that comes across East Street goes up Summer, and that's,
So if we were going to, well, first of all, I hate conditional approvals. We've said that for a long, long time, so I probably would vote against a conditional approval. But if we were to entertain that, it would be conditional on notification of these abutters that we had a meeting,
Have you ever done this? I don't know what happened.
not for something like that. Conditional is usually some condition. This is a condition of someone being notified that we're going to talk about this, and they don't have the opportunity to come in and participate.
Our regulations say abutters, when applying for a variance, abutters within 250 feet of the lot need to be notified 10 days prior to the hearing. I'm missing 8 addresses as far as I can see. He might have notified them, and I'm just missing this certified number. We just can't locate it at this time.
Or did they not send them in?
I don't have that answer either.
I don't have it, I don't.
So
But
we
you'd
have to
have
do-
the top part.
I don't have this for
Yeah,
8 of
you'd
them.
show that you sent it, yeah.
Yeah, so 8, I'm missing everything, and maybe there are still at Gary's, I just don't know how to handle, we've never had this
So,
before.
just to continue, I don't like the idea that we'd be notifying them that we had the meeting, and by the way, we voted
Yeah.
on doing this without giving them the opportunity. But I think that what Gary, from being here a lot and knowing what we're talking about now, I'd be surprised if the board didn't grant these variances.
No,
Yeah.
no, I-
I'd be very surprised. I just think that we should allow these people, if need be, to come in and talk to us.
I agree.
Yeah.
I don't understand why it's not there, and unfortunately,
yeah, I don't
Nancy's still in the hospital.
And while you're here, what's going on with your fam?
Just, which friend is it?
Fam.
Oh, what's going on, we're on for the next meeting.
Oh, you are? Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah, we're on for
Oh,
the
I didn't know
next
that. Oh, wonderful.
The next
You mean
meeting.
for this,
We can do everything.
for this property?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh.
Oh, wonderful.
So then, at the next meeting, we should vote then this, assuming that everything is,
All right. My client
I mean,
was
everything is,
not happy, but that's fine.
May I,
My gut reaction is that we did send them out, I just don't have it.
I believe so.
But that's fine,
I have the ones that are missing.
yeah.
I can email you the addresses that I'm missing to see if you have them, and we'll take another look at this tomorrow.
I wouldn't mind, we went through this quite a few times.
Did
Nancy
you
and I. Nancy
Did
and
you
I did.
check to be sure you had the certified or back check it?
Yeah, we went through quite a few times. That's why I'm kind of like,
Right now?
I just went through it several times if you want to do it.
yeah.
Andrea and I mean, I can do.
No,
We did.
we'll go back through. Maybe there's green slips that are sitting in.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, Nancy just didn't pick them all, didn't give them all to you. But that's fine. If they're not there, they're not there. I'll just have to go back and look.
So what do you,
I would say we continue this application for up to 60 days.
it's gonna be-
You're gonna do more blasting, right? That's what was gonna occur between now and a month from now?
No, this is all the blasting that's left. This is it.
Oh, so just construction?
Yeah, it's just the houses.
I mean, you understand, right? I mean.
No, I understand. I don't understand why, I understand, I understand.
Understands us, so you
Yeah,
don't
I
understand
just
why
don't,
that
I
is.
don't understand why they're not there.
But what would be nice if we
Right now.
just kind of wrap up you in this
Check again.
project, sorry, wrap up your project next month, just have it done with.
Yeah, you can check,
Yeah.
if you want Betty to quickly.
I could just look
I
at
went through it, Andrea went through it, just another set of eyes, because I know the 8 addresses that were
but
missing.
if, let's say we have to postpone this till next month.
Eight's a lot.
Next month,
It's
we
a lot,
also, we're
so
talking about the
these are the
FAM.
ones.
We're talking about the
that-
FAM next month.
And then
circle
is
that
that
say
it?
no.
That's
I
it.
don't have any.
That's it.
That's, okay, so you
That's it.
okay, 3 notes, I didn't have enough.
So these,
All right. And you're gonna
And I
blast
went
at
to
all
the-
those 3 sites?
I just
Yes.
wanna know, 3 notes.
And you've already blasted at all of them? All sites already?
No, we blasted for the road.
Oh, for the
Yeah,
road,
they
that's
have
right,
no-
that's
they
what you
have no
said.
basements. That-
You
he
did say
hasn't-
that.
Some of them do that in advance, and we,
Okay. Want a
scold
cookie
them.
while you're waiting?
Yeah,
No.
just give me anything else that you have. You need to-
Is there any soil up there at all, Gary, or is it all ledge?
There's a little bit, about
No,
3
not
feet.
much.
Yeah, about, in places there's 3 or 4
So
feet.
this one.
Really?
Yeah. Funny thing is the soil that's there is pretty good.
Yeah.
Just not a lot of
blasted
it.
over at,
Yeah. It's not that
Baxter
bad.
Park. All the neighbors down below complained about water on their property from the blasting.
Right,
And then we also had this same issue on Baker Hill,
yep, Baker
when they were
Hill.
blasting, all the
Liberty,
neighbors down below
yeah.
complained about water
Bradley
in their
Park,
yard.
they all
Yeah.
got flooded.
So that's why I think that notifying everybody, that's the right thing to do.
Who's, is it Windjammer that's on the top part up there? That's Windjammer?
Yeah, you can't see it.
Windjammer
Well,
is.
you can't see it, but,
Windjammer's up here.
oh, over there?
Yeah. Yeah, it's way up on the backside.
I'm gonna take a ride up here. And what's that other circle that's on, up the lot?
That's
top
Ledgewood.
left? What is that?
That's Ledgewood.
Ledgewood? So what is directly, if the water is being driven upward, not upward, but you know,
They're 3A.
that's 3A?
That's 3A, and then the conservation owns the parcel on the opposite side.
What, does it get piped under 3A
Gets piped under 3A.
and just dumps into that wetland over there?
Yep, yeah. Yeah, it
That's
dumps
good.
into
So
that.
there are no houses up there
No,
in that
No.
area?
no, there's a big wetland up there.
And was there another one?
Cool, it just
No,
seems like we're.
I don't, I really didn't anticipate or didn't see any issues with, in terms of, not on this one. In terms of changes and then, and.
Because
all
you really
the-
couldn't start, even if we did a conditional approval, you couldn't start anyways until you get it's gonna take 10 days for the mail to go back and forth, and so.
No,
Yeah.
it's,
You-
no,
you're
there's no
saving-
sense.
Yeah, I agree. You
I'm
wouldn't be-
I'm not sure what happened.
And it gives you a chance to come in and talk to us even longer the next time.
Gary, what is the I'm guessing it's Beechwood number 1, which is the far left one?
This one here?
Yeah, if you take your finger to the left a little bit, yeah, right there, what, is that the wall? that we
No,
talked-
that's a detention basin. That's an infiltration basin.
Oh, that is?
Detention.
I thought it was, you had it over there, the big.
We
pump.
have, there's 5 of them all
Oh,
around,
that's
there's 5 of them around the site. Yeah, we have one here, one here, one here, and that's.
And the big.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you haven't been up, you got, go up and take a look, because right now, it's, I mean,
It's all muddy, you got a road in?
oh, no, the road's paved.
Really?
Oh, yeah, the road's paved, yeah,
So you
you
go
can,
up Rockwood Road, is that where, and you go, then on to Oakwood?
yep, yeah.
Going from the 3A.
We should,
3A.
because this is an FRD, and we bent
Right.
over
Right.
backwards.
Okay.
You should come up
grant
and take a look
variances
at it.
because we wanted you to keep the landscape
Does
as
Ledgewood
natural as
come right off
possible.
of
So we'll
3A?
see how you did.
You have to go up and look
Is
at
that
it, 'cause
Broadwood?
you'd be shocked how,
Few trees that were removed?
yeah, it's actually not that bad. I mean,
Can't be.
no, there's quite a few trees that are remaining, and actually, Matt has actually brought the.
It's the buffer between there and 3A that I'd be concerned, because you would have, for a conventional system, you know, that would have been.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you would have dug out for the backyards, right? That's where all the septic tanks,
Yeah.
septic systems would have been installed in the back.
Yeah, that's the one thing that is left, is that one basin down
So
low.
it's paved. I remember it was all mucky.
Gary, what's that yellow border?
That was, I left it on that, I should have turned it off, that was lot 4.
That was what?
That's lot 4?
That's lot 4, yeah. I just,
It's an existing house, right?
yeah, I just left it on. Sorry, I left that layer on, I should have turned it off.
But that house is gonna be part of the
That's
septic,
part-
right?
That's part of the condominium, yeah,
It's called a condominium?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because actually the lots are not really lots, they're just exclusive use areas.
Which would be the same, you know, we approved a development FRD on Ward Street, 3 units. That also would be a condominium development with the condominium association and a FAM. You know, same.
What makes it a
I didn't
condominium?
approve
Because they
that.
share the
Yeah.
Yeah,
septic?
yeah,
Yeah.
share a septic,
Yeah.
among other things.
No, actually, the condominium will actually own all the land. Yeah, it's like any other condo,
Yeah,
it's
just
just like
standard.
Derby Brook. Just instead of everybody having a common area, these people, these individuals have been listed as having exclusive use of certain areas, which
Yeah.
we are now
When do they
considering
want to pour
lots.
these things right away? Are they going to wait till March or April?
No, he's actually got 2 under agreement.
Do what?
This one's under agreement, I think this one right here is under agreement. This one he's trying to,
And Gary, do I remember, I don't think, because again, I remember Derby Brook and I watched, you know, I watched that zoning board hearing, I believe, about a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Have you been to us regarding the septic systems? Have we talked about it as a Board of Health? Or you've bypassed us on that one?
no, because it's.
I realize the title, it says a
Yeah,
40B,
it's under a
but
40B, so,
you bypassed it, didn't even kind of give us the
well,
opportunity to,
They don't have to.
I mean, we still have to come back for disposal works permits,
oh, so you're going to wait till that gets approved through the 40B process, then come back?
then come back, yeah.
Okay. I know they talked about,
But at that point, I mean, the only thing with regard to your the only thing I'd like you to consider is extend the time requirements, extend the time frames on a perk
let me
test.
talk about the process, because I guess you will be in for that one, because we haven't seen you yet on that.
No,
Okay.
yes, no, you haven't, because we're still in front of the ZBA.
Okay, that's why.
Yeah.
But I do know that when we had another 40B, we kind of chastised them a bit, because they bypassed us. We, come in and talk to us, here are our concerns. So that might be something that'd be helpful for you.
All right.
Or your applicant.
tried-
I think the applicant's us. It's a town, right? A town
I think
entity.
I think the applicant is well, it's Habitat, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's being, it's,
No, we're talking about process, it just,
all right. I'll,
It's about 5. She's right, there's 5. Yeah.
all right.
I'm sorry.
I don't know.
I'm gonna go through it one more time tomorrow myself. I'm gonna help you all on this.
Yeah,
all
but
right, one
let
more
me,
time. And then I'll let you
they
know
might
what-
still be at the house.
Okay, so while you're doing it, I'll do it and
Yeah.
we'll get in.
Yeah, they might still be at the house.
Yeah, 5, but she was right.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it
Um,
isn't,
Motion?
I can't believe Nancy would have missed him.
And again, I don't know if Susan had a point about this.
You got stuff going on.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I move to postpone this application for up to 60 days.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the matter? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Sorry.
That's all right. There's quite a few of us because of
There is.
because of the size of the parcel.
Yeah, it is, there was quite a few, so it's
Yeah.
just one of those, we need more time and probably 2 to.
All right, so we're gonna move on to the
See you, Gary.
guidelines. We waited on that. Guidelines for determining bedrooms and other rooms in residential.
It's actually
dwellings.
guideline singular.
Guideline?
Yeah. It's a guideline. It has various components, but it's a single guideline. What'd you say?
So it should be a guideline.
No, just guideline.
Okay, guideline for determining bedrooms and other rooms in residential dwellings served by septic systems. Okay, is everybody, read it? Looks like you put yet another change in there?
Yeah, I always try to keep you on your toes. And it's all English stuff, so I'll let you,
Oh,
yeah,
man, okay.
I'll let you go after it. Go for it.
Okay.
Fill them up, what is
So-
it? Yeah,
Oh, look, and there are other changes.
yeah.
Okay,
So you okay with
which
this?
that,
You okay with
which
the word
that.
save?
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, the which and the that's, because, we have that in there, the hyphen. So it takes out, actually takes out the comma too.
Okay.
You okay with that?
Mm-hmm, okay. So,
And another one, which and that on the last page.
I saw that. All right. Where did this come from? Who wrote it?
Betty and I wrote this.
Good work.
All three of us.
Good work.
Yeah, Susan, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
put her arguments in, and Betty, we shot those down, didn't we?
Okay, so we need to, have you read it before?
Well, this has already
I'm reading it.
Yeah,
Okay,
take your time.
I want,
We've already, if I may.
I've read
We-
it.
Yeah, we did a lot.
We've already voted this as a guideline.
Yeah.
I think the reason that we have it tonight, we're voting it as, with the changes that I'm recommending, and it was an opportunity for the public to hear about it, so I'd love to have Betty explain this up, or somebody, explain what it is that we're doing, so the public knows about it. Maybe Susan can do this?
So in the office, we just wanted to put guidelines in when we look at new building permits to what is a bedroom and what be constituted as another kind of room. So this is just guidelines for the residents and builders that we can hand out in the
Okay.
time of permitting a dwelling, and it would provide more feedback on the different kinds of room you have and if it considered a bedroom, because a septic system's built for bedrooms and that kind of flow.
The only thing, Susan, I noticed that, remember between the two paragraphs under purpose, we wanted a space in there? I see you hit enter. It starts on a new line, but if you had a space in there,
Between where state Title
yeah,
V
the two
regulation
paragraphs
also
have a space
addresses.
between
Oh, you
them.
want a space?
Yeah, yeah.
That, I
Because they're two completely different concepts.
Okay.
Did you want to review this with the public, since they're watching us tonight, about, just describing what a bedroom is and some of the issues? I think this is we've sent this out to a number of permitting boards, and when I was here last week and the week before, I certainly heard a lot back from them. Not negative or anything, but they just
What were
commented.
the comments?
Oh, some were comical.
yeah.
But for the most part, at least the building commissioner, it's something that everyone knows what we're thinking, and so moving forward. The issue about pool houses, are we gonna talk about this now? The issue about pool houses, where they really are little mini homes, can be easily addressed from the guideline to give the public,
This pool house is
information.
considered to be accessory dwellings?
they're detached.
You can't have a detached accessory dwelling yet.
We can't?
A pool house is a detached structure from
But
the
in-
primary.
So
Under zoning-
therefore it cannot be, because we are.
Is my understanding that under zoning, I could be incorrect, you have to have an attached accessory dwelling at this time.
Well, we see a whole bunch of pool houses that
Well,
don't.
you're talking about two different things. We're talking about pool house, not accessory dwelling.
Yeah, that's right.
No, but that's what
Accessory
I'm
dwelling-
asking, was
accessory dwelling has to be
it's not
attached.
considered an accessory dwelling because it is a detached. Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Goes for accessory dwelling units we're talking about. Has to be attached.
Wait, Lizzie's talking about a detached pool
I
house.
was just asking if that is considered an accessory dwelling. It's not, obviously.
And that's where the heat, shower, and toilet come in.
Yeah, you want to talk about that, Peter?
Yeah, if it lacks any one of those, you can have a detached pool house that complies with our regulations.
Right.
If it lacks a toilet, or any one of those three. If that's 2 out of 3, it complies.
Yeah, so if you have a structure, let's say a pool house, we just use that because that's the most elaborate, has water in it. So if it has water, a toilet, right, you can, and it has a shower that you can bathe, and it has heat, you can live in the damn thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So if it
we-
lacks
so-
any
so
one of
we limit-
those,
Yeah,
Okay.
but you can have two of them. So I know that
Have
we've
two.
had the guy that works in his garage, and he didn't want to go and track the muck inside.
yeah,
So he has a toilet and shower, or he has a toilet in his garage.
yeah,
Yeah,
can't have a shower.
can't have a shower, but he has heat because he works out there in the garage.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have somebody who has this, then it's considered a bedroom.
Well, this just gives you guidance. It's, it's how the board thinks about bedrooms and,
Right.
the total room count.
So that you can't have this, okay.
I know that to start with Betty, when she would be doing inspections in homes, like, what constitutes a bedroom, and walking through these places. And, it's like the place has 8 bedrooms, which are the legal ones. And so this will help with that process. And I think it's really fair. It is fair to the homeowner because it gives them the ability to have these other rooms that, you may consider it is a bedroom, but it really isn't because of some unique characteristic, like the walk-through and things like that we talked about.
Okay.
And I think a lot of these are innocently designed, you're not realizing, like, if you will, so much the she shed. Now, if people, I've seen a few of those, well.
I've only seen that in the
out there,
ads
people
on
going,
TV.
What the heck, but they're starting to take these pool houses and becoming them little quarters. I mean, if actually a woman said, this is my place, well, there's heat and there's this and there's that, and you start to say, well, where does that all fit in
Right.
to our regulations?
No, I think it's great. And
Yeah.
we have these guidelines and that
Times
we
have
can.
changed and we just have to kind
Yep.
of make sure it fits, yeah.
And to have a bunch of copies so that you can hand them out
Yes,
and say, this is what you gotta deal with. I
absolutely.
think it's good. All right.
So on our website, is this listed as no, it's listed as approved. So we're just voting to amend the existing guideline
Okay.
well, it's already posted.
So you wanna
Should I
make a
do that one?
motion?
Since I
Yeah,
did the
make a
English-
motion.
I did the English changes?
Yes, please make the motion.
Move to amend the guideline for determining bedrooms and other rooms in residential dwellings served by septic systems as amended here.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Yep. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Does this go on the website?
It's already
Okay.
up.
It's already there.
It's already there?
We are getting things done tonight.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. EHO report.
In your packets, you'll see the office status report. It has the number of inspections that the food inspector's done, the social worker, and our nurses report, and what they've been seeing in November and December.
Well, that was emailed to us, so I can.
Yeah, and you guys can go through that. Let me know if you have any questions. We're also in the permitting season, and that the bottom has the number of permits that we've issued.
Can you tell me what RTD at the bottom and WWTP stand for?
Sure. Rubbish, trash, and disposal,
Okay. rubbish, trash.
and WWTP is wastewater treatment plant. So those are all IA maintenance contracts that we track.
Okay. Okay.
And then there's
We
two,
have 292 wastewater treatment plants? And is that the total number, or is that just the number that have renewable permits this month or in the last
it's
quarter?
a yearly permit.
Right,
so
but
that's
do we
the
do
number
all of
that
the-
we-
all of those systems at once? Okay.
So that's a total number.
292.
There's, how many residents?
7,000.
8,000, homes.
7,000,
and
8,000.
so
These are innovative alternatives.
Yeah, right.
It's a very
These are
small
all-
number, relative to 8,000.
And then there's two additional topics that I was gonna bring up in the EHO that you do not have a report for. This Saturday, I was called out along with fire, police, building, and the plumbing inspector. There was a call for no heat at Lincoln School Apartments. They have 4 boilers. When we arrived, there was one that was working. They had called in their plumbing and heating, and it took us several hours to analyze the situation and see what the status was of their heat. It was working by the time we rolled down to 11 PM, that they had 3 out of the 4 boilers working, and the heat was at code of 64 degrees at night. The towns,
So it took them like 12 hours to get it working?
well, we were called around 6, so it took
PM.
them PM. It got working around 11. So what's happening now is we're going to be working with the management company there to get a process in for if this happens again in the future.
This is part of the state housing code, right? 'Cause it's a-
State sanitary
Yeah,
code, correct.
Yeah, for housing. And so deficient heat, there's a requirement, you have to have a certain level of heat at all times.
Yeah, 68 during the day, 64 at night.
Did they ever figure out why the 3 boilers failed?
When the temperature dips,
The what?
when the temperature dips, it was cold, very cold Friday and Saturday, they had trouble keeping up in temperature.
When would you make the call to order the facility closed and move those residents into a warm, safe environment? And where would you put them?
Yeah.
Well, that's a great question. So we are working with different departments, emergency prep, we were working with Cochrane, the management company. The town manager was involved, and we would discuss that. It was still an open discussion at the time, because it could have been a possible evacuation.
our
But we would
emergency
open up an
site.
emergency shelter, and we were looking to either Hingham High School as a designated shelter, or we were looking at the senior center. That did not have to happen. The boilers got working, but that's under our emergency shelter plans.
What would people do with their pets?
Pets are allowed at
Yeah.
shelters, yes. We would let our animal control officer
You're
know.
gonna bring your chickens and goats and everything?
You can bring your companion animals are allowed at shelters also.
And we have,
Therapy.
Snakes and
we have a town work staff that would set that up.
lizards.
Yes,
Because I know that some of the shelters, it's kind of a quasi-public entity that helps out with,
yeah, well, we've notified Red Cross, MEMA, and FEMA. We also have regional shelter,
but all the equipment would be ours, we'd set it up, and they would just,
and if we needed others
they would help out.
from other towns, yes.
I know we've had shelters, right, when we've had some of the blizzards and,
Warming centers.
yeah, warming centers. Warming centers.
So,
But this would be something different, because it would be late at night. and you'd have
correct,
to-
yes, but we did not have to activate our emergency plan because the heat was brought up to
Okay.
code. And
So-
then the other thing I wanted to bring up, happened today, there was a sewer main break off a Downer. That untreated sewer was getting into the storm drains. The sewer supervisor had notified DEP, Conservation, Board of Health, and that's the protocol. He is working, prior to the meeting, it was shut off, and they were piping it over the ground, and they'll be working all night to rectify that problem. Kirk also sits on the sewer commission, so he might be able to add some further comments.
So they're actively pumping from the main?
There's a,
Or
yeah,
was it broke?
this is a force main break. And so they are taking it, and they gotta put it someplace. And so they're piping it into a storm drain, which is going into the environment. 6,000
Not right
gallons.
now.
Oh, all day
I thought-
today.
Yeah, but I thought you said that they are now.
I
Right,
believe
yeah.
that by 7 o'clock, they had rerouted the pipe around the break back into the pumping plant, and they're no longer discharging that into the environment.
For how many hours do you think it's been going into the environment?
He called me about, you were on the phone when you had to go, like noontime.
You called,
Yeah, I
it's when
was
you
on.
called me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lizzie called exactly at the same time, yeah.
noontime.
Yeah, noontime, until 7 o'clock was the repair, 6,000 gallons. So you figure a pumping truck that comes to your house that can hold 4,000 gallons of septic
So a
effluent.
truck and a half
Truck
worth
and a
of
half.
stuff went into, and did it go?
But don't
into-
forget, when Hull had their sewage treatment plant break a couple of years ago, they were pumping the entire town into the ocean for a month,
Remember that.
3 weeks, so.
I remember that.
It's, and I think that Susan will probably speak to what we now need to do to mitigate that, it
And
really,
when do those drains go into the harbor?
environmental
Yeah.
catastrophe in some regard, right? It's a lot
So
of,
what happens next? Is there water testing? Like tomorrow and then in a week, or what, how do they
Conservation
monitor?
was involved was notified for the harbor, but in terms of treating it, he would be treating it tomorrow, once it's all repaired, with lime on the surface area and probably flush it out.
Isn't there a way that
Doesn't
they
allow
could pump that into a truck rather than pump it into the harbor?
It went into a storm drain.
Yeah, but why couldn't they, in 6 hours, have
It-
brought a
it was-
tank truck
It was
empty?
gurgling up out of the ground.
Yeah,
So-
so they had to go down and locate the break and,
And so it was
Reroute it.
pooling on site, and they had a pump from the
Oh.
pooling site, they had to put it someplace, and I guess, why couldn't they have pumped it into a truck?
well,
I'll ask that question.
get it in some kind of container and then pump it into a truck, that's,
It's coming out from a crack in the pavement.
Yes. So you'd have to contain it in something that the pumping truck can kind of
Yeah.
suck that up.
It's like a water, it looks like a water main break.
Yeah, like a sheeting of the water.
Yeah.
I don't.
Hmm.
So the
So is there
ground will
anything we
filter a
have
lot of
to
the
do?
effluent.
I just wanted to notify you.
Yeah, but there's nothing we have to do while.
Well,
Also
I'll work
follow
with
up,
the, I'll work with the sewer supervisor
Was the
tomorrow.
break right at the pump house, the
Yeah,
station?
on our property, on the town property, yeah. It was an old main that, a lot, I tell you, I've been on the sewer commission for, one term. There are a lot of pipes that just haven't been
Is that a cast?
maintained,
is
and
that
so
an
we're doing it
cast iron-
now.
Cast iron pipe?
Yep,
Yeah.
ductile.
We are,
What
because we
diameter?
voted for that on town meeting, right?
I don't know, it's a force main, and so it's gonna be smaller than what you typically would have in there for gravity. And so my guess is it was gonna be probably an 8,
6 or an 8 inch.
6 or an 8.
Yeah.
But I believe that they treat it with lime, right?
Correct,
To
yeah.
How does that, what does that do?
decrease the acidity. It makes the organisms unhappy, because they enjoy the more
It
acidic
Yeah, it
environment.
neutralizes the,
Yeah, and it neutralizes it for the environment, yeah. But it's going into the, it's a problem, and how can you fix it? Hopefully they're working diligently. I'll call after the
but
meeting and make sure.
didn't we as a town vote to replace a lot of the sewer?
Oh, we now have a capital plan.
lines? Yeah,
Thanks for asking.
because,
We have a
because
capital plan.
there was that, we were sucking water out of the ground into the sewer because of the cracks in the pipes, right?
We have an extensive I&I process, inflow and infiltration. But, you can't replace every single pipe, you have to do it in steps. So this is not one that is on our
It wasn't
capital
on the
plan.
radar? Okay.
And, they're all on kind of the radar, but you have to wait till they fail to speed them up, or you just go through the capital plan, your most significant failures that would adversely affect the town. That's what we focused on. Because again, capital planning was deficient for a number of years.
Okay.
Is that okay for,
That's all.
All right. Thank you,
Good.
Mr. Sewer Commissioner.
there we go.
We're good. Close the meeting.
All right. What else? Anything else that we need to, any new business?
Just set a date. You got your calendar?
Yeah, I've got my Hallmark calendar.
Might I have one or more of these?
Yes, you can
I
finish
don't
them
get
off.
dinner
Take them.
tonight. Suzette and Emlyn went to New York City this morning.
Oh, how fun.
So I'm in charge. What's that?
Okay. We are looking, what are we looking at?
This is gonna be a longer meeting. If you wanna have 2 possibly in February, or could have a longer, we're gonna be discussing FAMs. I also have the range, possibly.
The
Oh,
range,
look
that
at the
place.
plastic
amount of time we
bags?
spent tonight. Well, we're early tonight. It's not 10 o'clock yet. I am
For
in
those of
Colorado the final week in February.
And I'm gone this week.
I see that. So it has to be that 17.
The week of, that's February school vacation.
None of us have kids. Do you?
I don't have
any
kids.
Kid applications.
I do have kids, but
Is there anybody who would be involved in the meetings who would have a problem with that? I don't know who's coming to those meetings. Why you guys laugh?
There's- One of the children lives in South Carolina, so that's irrelevant.
the 18th should be fine.
19th?
The 18th Tuesday?
Okay, I'm on Lake Hall, but I
What
can
night
try
is
and get
that,
coverage.
Lizzie?
It's a Tuesday.
Tuesday,
How come we don't go back to Thursdays?
we can?
It's up to Lizzie.
I'm on Lake Hall on the 18th, but I could switch it if I had to, but I can
What
do the 20th.
Want to do the 20th?
Yeah.
The 20th? Okay. Yeah, what time?
6.
6? All right, I'll have to work on that one.
Can we do it?
Oh,
all night?
what time you want.
Yeah.
It has to be 7 for you anyways, right? No matter what.
Well, I'll try and get there at 6 if it's gonna be a longer one. I'll see what I can do. You know, it's hard.
Oh,
It's like-
I don't, whatever time you can make it.
No, I know, but I mean, I'll
Because I have
just
to
try
come
and
from
do whatever
Brookline
I
on
can.
Thursdays. That's easier for me.
Oh, actually, I'm free second call, so I should be one of the first people out that day.
That's 2:20.
Okay, so
Okay, let's do
February,
6 p.m.
Thursday, February 20th at 6 p.m.
Yeah, time to be determined by the chair.
Okay,
Well,
thank
I'm
you.
setting it to 6 because I'm hoping that I get out at a decent hour.
What does that other thing mean?
What's this, second call, right
Yeah,
there?
what's second call mean?
Second call means that I'm the last person to go home from the hospital, and then I'm on backup call till 7 a.m.
Wow.
So I can get called in all night long.
Stop tape.
People are getting an education regarding this.
Thank you.
All right, so move to adjourn the meeting at 9:50.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.